Chapter 31. Just when the four nobles were laughing like crazy, they heard Teacher Dylan say, "Now start checking the time warp technique." They immediately fell silent, with expressions on their faces as if they had eaten bile. "Humph, look at your appearance, time hasn't even been distorted yet, your faces have become distorted first." John Dylan said, "You all line up, come one by one, Anthony, you come first." The result this time was completely in line with John Dylan's expectations. Anthony and George still failed and were regarded as scum in the key class. If he were placed in another college, he probably wouldn't even be able to get in. Luca Rossi is slightly better, but it still takes 3 seconds to cast the spell, and he can only accelerate himself for 2 seconds. This result is almost negligible, let alone accelerating his teammates. Practical skills such as time warp are basically considered to be up to standard if they are instantaneous. This time, Alan Hawthorne was not as depressed or anxious as he was the previous times. Instead, he seemed very confident. Alan Hawthorne is instant. This passed the test. He not only accelerated himself for 5 seconds, but also accelerated Luca for 5 seconds. This result can be regarded as the best for Alan Hawthorne in the past 6 months. John Dylan said with appreciation, "Very good, Alan has completely met the standard." After saying that, he turned his attention to Daniel. The look of disgust that Daniel had just received for blindly signing up has now disappeared, replaced by a look of expectation. "Daniel, it's your turn." Alan Hawthorne folded his hands on his chest. The reason why he was confident this time was because his mother found him a new and important tutor. It is said that this tutor also tutored the Marquis's children, and the Marquis was 1 level higher than his Earl father. Moreover, the Marquis manages border areas or border territories, and his main responsibility is to defend against foreign enemies, monsters in the wilderness, and some strange races. Therefore, the Marquis pays special attention to the training of warriors and wizards. After all, these are real combat capabilities. In other words, the tutors that Alan Hawthorne spent a lot of money to hire were not simple. This was to give the children a head start. Daniel Hawkins nodded to Teacher Dylan, and then used time warp. Alan Hawthorne watched Daniel's own acceleration, and couldn't help clenching his fists, silently counting the time in his heart, 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. At the 4th second, Alan could not help but feel nervous when he saw that Daniel was still doing it with ease. Daniel glanced at Alan and gave a mean smile. Alan was stunned. Just when he thought Daniel was about to exceed his record, Daniel stopped. 5 seconds, same as Alan, not bad. John Dylan said. Alan Hawthorne breathed a sigh of relief. "Can you ask the person next to you to speed up too?" Dylan asked. "I'll try," Daniel said. It was too late, but it was so fast that the people around them had not yet reacted. Alan, Luca, Anthony, George, and even Teacher Dylan felt a magic injected into themselves, and their movement speed increased. Anthony and George even started running with joy, shouting as they ran, "Ha ha ha, it turns out this is a time warp, it's so cool." They ran for about 10 seconds before stopping. After everything returned to normal, John Dylan couldn't restrain his excitement and praised repeatedly, "Excellent, so excellent. I never thought you could accelerate 5 people to 10 seconds at the same time. How did you do it? You hired me after class." "Tutor." The 4 nobles all looked at Daniel. "How is it possible?" Daniel said, "I live in a slum, how can I afford a teacher?" Then, he pointed at the 4 nobles and said, "Even if I can afford it, then the quality of my tutor is it's not as good as theirs. It's all about hard work and hard work." The 4 nobles felt really uncomfortable listening to Daniel's words, but they didn't know what to say, especially Alan Hawthorne, whose face turned dark again. When Luca saw his friend Alan in this state, he didn't bother to persuade him. After all, Alan's face hadn't gotten better in the past 6 months of class. After listening to Daniel's words, John Dylan nodded and expressed full approval. He said to the 4 nobles, "See, diligence and hard work are the kings. I hope you will all be humble and treat Daniel well." "Study." George said, "I know, Teacher Dylan, I will." Luca Rossi quickly nudged George with his elbow. George looked at them and closed his mouth. In the end, except for Daniel and Alan, the other 3 were punished to pick anemone flowers. Although Alan was not punished, he still felt as if he had eaten siang. However, this time Alan Hawthorne was not in a bad mood compared to before, because he was waiting for the next qualifiers to see how Daniel Hawkins was defeated. After the course was over, the four nobles left immediately. After all, they didn't like being around Daniel, and they all thought Daniel was an eyesore. However, this leaves the opportunity for Daniel and teacher Dylan to be alone together. Just when Daniel Hawkins thought there was nothing wrong and was about to go to the market to set up a stall to make money, he heard John Dylan calling him. "Daniel, wait!" Daniel turned to look at teacher Dylan and found that he had a serious face. Could it be that he was still angry about the registration for the competition? "Forget it, let him blame. Can't you withdraw from the registration now?" John Dylan said. It was indeed this matter. Daniel nodded and said, "And I don't want to withdraw from the registration, teacher Dylan, don't worry, I must have my reasons for signing up, I know it in my heart." John Dylan put away his serious expression and sighed, "I really don't understand you young people, but I found a characteristic of you." Daniel was shocked. "What characteristic?" "After observing for half a year, I found that you can quickly learn any spell cast on you. Although sometimes you seem to be struggling, I know that you are pretending." John Dylan said seriously. I didn't expect that the secret hidden for many years, half a year was suddenly discovered by others. It seems that my acting skills need to be improved." However, after hearing what teacher Dylan said, Daniel Hawkins built a defensive wall in his heart. He thought, if teacher Dylan found out that I had a system, would he treat me as an outsider and report me to some institution, and then arrest me for experiments? Thinking of this, he was determined not to admit that he had a system, and he had to be more careful to hide it in the future. Chapter 32. The Dying Wizard. Just when Daniel Hawkins was about to defend himself, he heard teacher Dylan say, "Talent is a good thing. Talent is a gift given to you by the ancient gods. You don't have to be nervous about your talent." Daniel chuckled and didn't know what to say for a moment. He held it in for a long time before saying, "So you won't send me to an institution?" "Institution? What institution?" Teacher Dylan said, "Daniel, why do you always say these incomprehensible things? To be honest, sometimes I feel that you are not from this world." After Daniel heard this, he was startled again, and a cold sweat broke out on his forehead. When he was speechless again, teacher Dylan said again, "You specialize in ice magic, right?" Daniel nodded. "As far as I know, one of the things you master now is the ice shield, and the other is the ice cone technique, right?" Teacher Dylan said. Daniel continued to nod. "Very good, release your ice shield now." Teacher Dylan said. Hey, Daniel was confused as to what to do, but he still did it. It was too late, but it was too late. Just as he released the ice shield, an arrow-like thing flew over and hit him, directly breaking his shield. Moreover, he felt that his whole body was frozen, and his movement was slow and difficult. After a while, he felt a burst of weakness and fell directly to the ground. He looked at the upper left corner. Good guy, the health value has dropped by 4/5. If it weren't for the ice shield upgrade 2 days ago, the consequences would be really unimaginable. Otherwise, I would have to explain it here today. Think about it. They all felt scared. Are you okay? John Dylan rushed forward and held Daniel's shoulders. It's okay, it's just that half of his life is gone. Daniel said angrily, and tried his best to squeeze out a smile. John Dylan looked at the bloodless Daniel and knew that he was not joking. He apologized and nodded, I'm sorry, I didn't think well. I just signed up, Daniel said, there's no need to punish me like this. It seems like there's no need for the qualifiers. I'll probably tell you here today. I didn't want to punish you, John Dylan said. I just wanted to help you. Help me. Daniel said, help me by killing me? How novel. Like I just said, I think as long as you cast a spell on you once, you can quickly learn a magic. John Dylan said, I just thought, if I can see it before your qualifying competition next week, can I teach you offensive spells as soon as possible? In this case, I think your chances of winning will be greater. Even if you can't win, it won't be ugly. It turns out that my guess was wrong, said John Dylan with a sad face, it was my lack of consideration. After hearing what teacher Dylan said, Daniel Hawkins suddenly felt moved. It turned out that it felt so good to be cared about. He quickly said, no, teacher Dylan, you guessed it right. If nothing else, I will recover. After I gain some strength, I should be able to do that trick you just did, and I can show it to you after school tomorrow." If possible, Daniel could not wait to take another blow from Teacher Dylan. Teacher Dylan said, "Yeah, let's talk about it tomorrow." Daniel returned to his room under the teleportation of Mr. Dylan. This time Mr. Dylan did not dare to stay. Before Daniel could speak, John Dylan just left a message, "Have a good rest," and then handed him a bottle of life. After taking the potion, he teleported away immediately. After all, he didn't want to stay for dinner like last time. Sure enough, as soon as Hawkins' parents heard something moving upstairs, they hurried up and thought they could see Teacher Dylan again, so they continued to get close to the teacher and drink beer. But when they came up, they found Daniel lying on the bed with a pale face. It was the first time Rob saw Daniel like this. He was frightened, and his mother Emma screamed. Rob hurriedly stepped forward and slapped Daniel's cheek. As he slapped, he thought, he had never spanked a child so hard before. He had always done it carefully. Who on earth could slap such a heavy hand? Daniel was in urgent need of rest now. Under his father's patting, he could barely concentrate his thoughts. I want to rest, you guys, go out, I'm fine." After saying that, he turned around and fell asleep. Daniel slept until noon the next day. When he woke up, he found that his health had only recovered to half, but at least his spirit was fine. When he saw the red potion on the table, he vaguely remembered that it was left by Teacher Dylan for him. He should drink it before going to bed, but he was not in a hurry now. He saw that his health was decreasing at a very slow rate. Moving forward, after today and a few rough meals in the college cafeteria, his health will probably be restored. So he put the life potion in his pocket. At the same level, the life potion was much more expensive than the magic potion. Hey, he saved a bottle and can use it later when he really needs it. He packed everything up, originally thinking of teleporting directly to the Wizarding Academy, but then he thought that Rob and Emma seemed worried last night, so he went downstairs to say hello to them first. When he came downstairs, he saw only Rob, Emma, and David's family with serious faces, especially Rob, who had a completely straight face. He must have done something wrong again, Daniel thought. It must have something to do with registration. Thinking of this, he felt a little unhappy. Why don't I just sign up? Why do I feel like I committed a huge crime? It's like something wrong. Just listen to Rob waving his hands and saying, "Let's not talk about that first. Tell me, are you being bullied in the academy?" Hi. Daniel was confused. "Son, you don't have to be afraid. Your father was once a brave and skilled knight. If you have any difficulties in the academy, just tell your father." Emma said, "Although your father didn't treat you very well before, but your father always knows how to measure. The main reason why Dad is bad is because of his mouth and his inability to speak, and your father can't see waste." Ahem, my brother David was coughing on the side. After listening to Emma's words, Rob was a little embarrassed. "What are you doing? Let's talk about the children now. Daniel, tell me, are the nobles in the school bullying you?" No. Daniel said. He said no, you wouldn't have been injured like that last night. Don't think I don't know. After all, I was once a knight and saw a dying wizard. Rob said angrily, "That's right, except for those nobles, that there is no one else but these dandy children. I know those noble children very well. They are ignorant and unskilled all day long, and they only catch the common people to bully them." At this point, Rob slapped the table and stood up. "Son, you don't have to be afraid. I will go to the academy with you today to seek justice." Chapter 33. Daniel saw his father Rob take out his treasured two-handed sword of his comrade the Broken, and then he knew that his father was serious. This does not allow Rob to really go to the academy. Then he will not experience near death, but social death. After seeing his father equip the breaker and prepare to set off, Daniel hurriedly said, "It was not the noble students who beat me, it was Teacher Dylan who beat me like this." "Ah? Teacher Dylan?" Rob said, "The one who had a great time drinking with me that night. That's him, he was the one who sent me back last night." After Daniel saw that Rob and Emma's expressions relaxed a lot, he himself breathed a sigh of relief. "What did you do that made him beat you like this?" Rob asked. Just as Daniel was about to explain, Emma Hawkins, who had always been silent, interrupted, "Even if the student makes a mistake, the child cannot be beaten like this no matter what." "That's right. Seeing the originally relaxed father, he became anxious again after hearing what his mother said. What's wrong with the teacher at that college? It doesn't mean that you can't spank. Even if my child makes a mistake, if he is a noble, would he be so harsh? Haha, no wonder he left in a hurry after sending Daniel back. Emma said with a mocking look on her face, it turns out that there is something wrong in his heart. That's right. Daniel, let's go. I'll call the carriage. We'll go to the academy in the afternoon. I will definitely seek justice for you. Robert vowed. Stop, Daniel yelled. Son, you don't have to be afraid, Emma said. Mother, shut up first. Father, shut up too. David, please stop coughing. You all should be quiet and listen to me, listen to me. Daniel was so anxious that he even spoke English. Rob and others heard English for the first time, but they just thought Daniel was chanting a wizard's spell. However, fortunately, the people present calmed down. Daniel quickly told them the situation in detail. As he explained, the family fell into deep thought. After a long time, Rob Hawkins said, So, you are saying that Teacher Dylan beat you like this just to help you? No. This was all an accident. Daniel said, covering his forehead, but at least it was good to see that his father didn't have the urge to break into the academy. Then why did Teacher Dylan run away without saying hello? Rob continued to ask. It goes without saying that he just doesn't want to say hello to you. Daniel said. Daniel finally managed to deal with his family. He walked out of the house, turned directly into a deserted alley, and teleported directly back to the academy. Daniel first ate 2 slices of steak in the dining hall and drank a large cup of Hawkins sour plum soup. This is also a new drink that Daniel recently formulated for the chef. It is very popular. The method of making the drink is relatively simple and the gross profit is higher, so the head chef was so happy that whenever he saw Daniel, he would smile until his eyes narrowed. But this time Daniel was a little different. After finishing his meal, he took out a piece of paper and handed it to the chef. The chef took it and took a look. The general content was nothing more than the issue of naming rights of the food. The cream must be Hawkins cream, the mashed potatoes must be Hawkins mashed potatoes, and the current sour plum soup must be Hawkins sour plum soup. And any dishes served by Hawkins in the future will be named after Hawkins. The head chef smiled and said, Why bother? Is this necessary? Daniel smiled and patted the chef on the shoulder and said, Chef, I know you are an honest person, but this matter is very necessary. If you want me to provide you with more dishes in the future. The head chef thought for a while, okay, there would be no harm anyway, so he signed. After signing, he even laughed at Daniel in his heart, even if he violated the contract in the future, what would happen? After signing, the head chef glanced at Daniel, but found that Daniel's look made him a little creepy, as if to say, if you dare, break the contract. Since Luca and the other 3 were picking anemones, and Alan knew that Teacher Dylan would not teach new spells until they finished picking anemones, so he did not appear in class. However, this is good, for John Dylan, it is more convenient to start a separate business with Daniel. How are you feeling now? John Dylan asked concerned. Daniel looked at the upper left corner and saw that his health had recovered to about 80%, so he said, it's not a big deal. John Dylan nodded and continued, so, have you learned the new spell? Hi. Daniel looked confused. I mean, have you learned the spell I cast on you? John Dylan said. Oh, well, wait. Daniel said as he clicked on the system panel. Ice arrow detected, whether to activate it. Yes. Ice arrow has been activated. Ice arrow LV1. John Dylan saw Daniel staring blankly ahead without blinking his eyelids. He couldn't help but stretched out his hand and waved it up and down in front of Daniel's eyes, thinking that Daniel's soul had left his body. Seeing that Daniel didn't respond for a long time, he couldn't help but feel disappointed and said, if you haven't learned it yet, just say you haven't learned it. There's no need to be so pretentious. Suddenly, Daniel turned to him and said, I can do it. John Dylan was frightened by his sudden action. What did you say? I know it, your move is called Frost Arrow, right? John Dylan was stunned. How did he know that move was called Frost Arrow? After all, he cast the spell so fast, how could he recognize it? Oh, yes, he must have gone to the library, or asked some seniors before, after all, there are too many people who can use ice magic. However, although he guessed Daniel's learning method, he still didn't believe that Daniel could master frost arrows so quickly. After all, the more profound the frost arrow is, the more passive effects it can bring. Thinking of this, he said to Daniel. Really? Please show me. John Dillon and Daniel Hawkins stood face to face, and Daniel rubbed his palms together in the air. After about 3 seconds, the air turned into a ball of blue light. After the ball of light became larger, it was sent to John Dillon. John Dillon dodged by leaning to the side. He exclaimed, "You are the fastest student I have ever seen learning magic. This is simply a miracle, no, a miracle. Otherwise, there is no way to explain it." Daniel listened to the praise from Teacher Dillon and said modestly, "It's okay. No, Daniel, you have a bright future. If you really learn at this speed, it won't take long for you to surpass me." John Dillon said, "I am honored to be your teacher." Chapter 34. Learned most of the magic. John Dillon also said, "Actually, when I saw you perform the ice cone, I was very surprised." Daniel nodded, he was used to other people's surprise. No, you don't know what surprised me," Teacher Dillon said with a smile. "Normally, a beginner wizard, according to the ice method, first mastered the magic shield, and then the ice arrow. These two are the most basic of the basics. But you skipped the ice arrow and mastered the ice cone." Daniel scratched his head and asked with a silly smile, "It just so happens that there are so many wizards, there is always an exception." "What I said makes sense. Take your ice cone for example," Teacher Dillon said. "Ice arrow can actually stack the passive of ice cone." "What?" Daniel's eyes lit up. Seeing his expression, Teacher Dillon smiled, and without saying a word, he shot an ice arrow at the dummy. Daniel saw that it was just an ordinary ice arrow. When he was about to ask, he saw Teacher Dillon pointing at his head. He looked over and found that an ice cone appeared on Teacher Dillon's head. Then Teacher Dillon released the ice cone towards the dummy and said, "See? Ice cone can be a passive skill of ice arrow. After being hit by ice arrow, you can play another layer of ice cone passive skill. Not only can the damage be higher, but the passive skill does not consume any magic power. So, I just said that most people give priority to learning ice arrow. Learning ice arrow is equivalent to learning half of ice cone skill. To be honest, I really doubted whether the tutor who introduced you to the door was a fake, but later I found that you were self-taught, so it's not surprising." Then, according to Teacher Dillon's instructions, Daniel released ice arrows at the dummy. Since he had just released one, he already had 2 ice cones on his head. Then he shot 2 more ice cones. The snap sound made by the dummy after being hit by ice cones sounded really good. He looked at his magic value, and only consumed 1/5 of it, which was indeed more mana saving than directly releasing the ice cone. Not bad, you use it very freely." Teacher Dillon praised, but Daniel's next move shocked him even more. Daniel released 5 ice arrows in a row, and after stacking 5 layers of ice cone passive, he combined the 5 layers of ice cone into one piece and shot it out directly. Judging from the effect of the shot, according to John Dillon's judgment of the damage to the dummy, the damage was at least doubled compared to a single hit. He couldn't help but say, "How did you know this?" Daniel smiled and said, "I just suddenly thought of it, and wanted to try to put them all together." In fact, it was based on his game experience before crossing. John Dillon also tried to combine the ice cone passive together and shoot it out, sighing, "Daniel, you are not only talented, but also very imaginative. You know, just based on that move just now, you can write a graduation thesis." "Thesis?" Daniel was stunned. He didn't expect that there were papers in this world, and he didn't expect to write a paper after crossing. Sometimes, we don't lack the power of magic, but we lack imagination about how to use it. Therefore, thesis is actually about communicating and spreading magic. John Dillon said. "So, are those theses all in the library?" Daniel asked. John Dillon nodded. "However, according to our authority, we can't access the truly valuable thesis. However, I still advise you to write the thesis about the trick just now and send it to the Wizard Association." "The Wizard Association?" Daniel said, "Why haven't you heard of it?" "Of course you haven't heard of it. Originally, this would take at least your 4th year, when you have to write your graduation thesis, and your teacher would tell you. But you can write the thesis now. No matter whether your trick is valuable or not, at least that trick is your original creation. Otherwise, it will be learned by others and then said that he invented it. Isn't it a pity? Daniel understood it after hearing it. It's nothing more than intellectual property rights plus monopoly. Fortunately, writing thesis is still experienced for him, so it seems that he has to write it as soon as possible. Yes, if you finish writing, I can help you contact the Wizard Association to publish it. Teacher Dylan said. Thanks. How many layers of ice cones can I stack in total? Daniel continued to ask, and then inferred based on his previous game experience, 5 layers. Strictly speaking, it can be stacked indefinitely. Teacher Dylan said. Then can I stack many layers and then build a large ice cone with superpower? Daniel couldn't help but wonder how powerful it would be at that time. You wish. Teacher Dylan said, do you think your enemy opponent will stand by and let you hit him, so that you can stack passive honestly? According to your current casting speed, the ice arrow will be killed before it is cast. Ha ha ha, Daniel laughed, and thought about it, so he said, then what should I do? What else can I do? John Dylan said, you will have a competition in a few days, learn as much as you can, and you can cast an ice arrow now. Daniel did as he was told, and halfway through, his casting was suddenly interrupted. He wanted to cast again, but he couldn't. This is called spell counter spell. It can interrupt other people's spell casting and prevent them from casting spells again for at least a few seconds, unless they use an instant spell. But at least it can buy you a few more seconds. Daniel opened the system panel and quickly activated counter spell, and demonstrated it to Teacher Dylan. Later, Teacher Dylan was amazed at Daniel's learning speed. He took out all the life potions he collected. He planned to try to teach Daniel all the moves he knew in the next few days. Daniel sighed that John Dylan might not be the most powerful wizard, but he was the wizard who cared about him the most and appreciated him the most. In the next few days, with the help of life potions and magic potions he had purchased and saved, he learned a lot of ice magic moves. It can be said that Daniel now knows everything that Teacher Dylan knows. However, in addition to John Dylan's sigh at his learning speed, he was also worried about Daniel, because although Daniel Hawkins knew many moves, they were not powerful enough, and even the casting speed of the ice arrow was about 5 seconds. Even if Daniel only used instant spells after he came on the field, instant spells not only consumed a lot of magic, but also had a long interval. If this continued, plus his very weak spells, it would only be a tickle for his senior. John Dylan wondered what to do. Chapter 35. Thesis. Daniel Hawkins didn't care much about the sad-looking Teacher Dylan. Instead, he looked at the system panel excitedly and looked at the spells he had learned. Offensive skills. Ice Shield LV3. Ice Cone LV1. Ice Arrow LV1. Blizzard LV1. Ice Ring LV1. Practical skills. Float. Teleport. Blink. Time Warp. Sheep Transformation. Counter Spell. In fact, the harvest is quite good. After all, he learned these in just 2 or 3 days. Daniel thought that if the life potion had not been used up and Teacher Dylan had no tricks, he would have wanted to learn a few more tricks. And the teacher is the teacher, the power is not to be underestimated. Take the blizzard for example. Daniel stood on the edge of the blizzard and was hit for a while. The shield was directly broken and his health value was reduced by 1/3. After he closed the system panel, he walked up to Teacher Dylan and asked, do you have any other tricks? Teacher Dylan shook his head and said, no, I've basically told you everything I know. That's good. Daniel nodded and said, thank you, teacher. Bullshit, you know a lot of tricks now, but you are facing a senior, the second-ranked senior in the school. To be honest, if I fight them, although I will definitely beat them in the end, they are also very tricky. Teacher Dylan said, according to your current magic power, you can't even break their shields, at most it's just a tickle for them. Teacher Dylan paced back and forth in the yard, looking at the grinning Daniel, and just shook his head. You have to know that when it comes to the competition, whether it is the preliminaries or the official competition, as long as you go on the field, it is like going to the battlefield. Although the probability is very low, if the opponent wants to kill you, you have no way to do it. Teacher Dylan's words surprised Daniel. This is different from the school he attended on Blue Star. Even if the students of the civil and military schools go on the field to compete, they will stop at a certain point. It seems that the civilization of this world is still quite barbaric. Thinking of this, Daniel couldn't help but smile, muttering in his heart, "Savage is good, savage is good." "What are you laughing at?" Teacher Dylan said, "You are still in the mood to laugh, think of a way." "Oh, forget it, there is no better way to increase your magic power in such a short time. Let's do this. After you go on the field, if the opponent casts a spell, you will use a spell to counter it immediately. If the opponent uses an instant spell, you will just flash away. Wouldn't that be embarrassing?" Daniel complained. "Do you want to lose face or lose your life?" Teacher Dylan said, "Survive healthy and you will have plenty of opportunities in the future. Why bother about this moment?" No, Teacher Dylan, you don't understand. I don't want to lose the right to choose a spouse in the academy so soon. There are so many witches in the academy, and I haven't talked to them yet." Then, Daniel handed the written paper to John Dylan. John Dylan took the paper and exclaimed, "It's finished so quickly." Then he glanced at the paper and saw that it was written Passive Superposition, Hawkins Ice Cone Synthesis Research. This title is quite novel, Hawkins Ice Cone. This kid wants to name the move after himself, so arrogant. Teacher Dylan rolled his eyes at Daniel, and then turned to the first page. He was simply stunned. What caught his eyes were dozens of catalogs, and the main title of the catalog was divided into several subtitles. A simple ice move, or a passive move, made him talk about it. From the origin of magic, the origin of wizards, the origin of ice magic, the use of ice magic, the significance of magic research, the significance of subdividing magic, the significance of ice magic, and even references. Just writing like this, there are more than 50 pages. John Dylan had lived for so long, but this was the first time he had seen someone write a paper like this. He glanced at Daniel and said, "It's just a passive move, is it necessary?" Daniel scratched his head and said, "Sorry, I'm used to writing papers." "Habit." John Dylan said, "Do you write papers every day?" Daniel realized that he had said the wrong thing, and his mind was turning quickly. He was just about to think of something to excuse himself, when he heard Teacher Dylan say, "I know, you are preparing for graduation in the future, so you often practice your paper at home, right?" "Ah, yes, yes," Daniel said quickly. "Humph, if you have time to spend so much time writing so many words on the paper, you might as well think about how to improve your magic power," Teacher Dylan said while hiding the paper in his robe. Finally, Teacher Dylan warned him, after all, the competition would be the day after tomorrow. After instructing Daniel, he turned around and left with a worried look on his face. He thought to himself, it would be a pity if such a good seedling was lost in the competition. In order to get ahead and gain fame, he can even sacrifice his life. Alas, young people are still too impetuous. "Teacher Dylan!" Daniel called him. Teacher Dylan turned around. "Thank you for this time." Daniel Hawkins bowed solemnly to Teacher Dylan. This was the first time he had such sincere respect for someone since he traveled through time. Teacher Dylan could feel the sincere emotion through his salute, and he couldn't help but be moved. He didn't expect that this kid looked so mean on weekdays, but he was still such a loyal person. After a while, Teacher Dylan choked up and said, "Well, I know. Go back and have a good rest." Then he turned and left. Suddenly, Daniel Hawkins called him again, "Wait, Teacher Dylan." Teacher Dylan turned around again and saw Daniel's sly expression again. The feeling just now disappeared in an instant, replaced by a bad premonition. He only heard him say, "What's wrong?" Daniel smiled and said, "Teacher, do you have money?" "What? Money?" Daniel raised his voice and rubbed his hands quickly, "It's those copper, silver, and gold sprinkles." "Of course, gold sprinkles are best. I know how to improve my magic ability, but I need money." "Hi." Teacher Dylan listened to what Daniel said and felt confused. Use money to improve magic ability? This was the first time he heard it, but after getting along with Daniel for this period of time, he felt that any incredible things happening to Daniel were not so strange. "So, ahem." Teacher Dylan said, "How much money do you need?" Daniel didn't even think about it and said, "The more the better." Puff. Teacher Dylan almost vomited blood. This was the first time he had seen such a weirdo in his life. It seemed natural to ask for money from others. Chapter 36. Wizard Bank. After some teleportation, Daniel came to the door of a wooden house between the city center and the slums. This is the home of Teacher Dylan. The environment is not like Daniel imagined a wizard's home. The house is surrounded by vines, and the smell of magic potion wafts from the house. There are no skeletons, totems, stained glass, or even magic books and scrolls. There is only a table. Just a bed and a cabinet. I saw John Dylan rummaging through the box and found a cloth bag. When he was about to pour all the money in the bag on the table, Daniel took John Dylan's hand and said, "Why don't you close the curtains? After all, it's essential to be on guard against others. If a wizard can't even keep his own money, then he is not qualified to own it." After Mr. Dylan said this, he poured out all the money. Jin S.A. didn't see much, but there was a pile of change. Daniel counted carefully, and then counted again. After the second count, he smiled at Teacher Dylan and said, "It seems that in the game the day after tomorrow, I'll be ready to flash, or what do you have, teacher? Teach me all the life-saving skills." Teacher Dylan's eyes widened and he said in surprise, "Isn't this much money enough? This is all my savings." "All your savings?" Daniel thought to himself, "Even so, there are only 2 gold coins in total here." Teacher Dylan has been teaching at the Wizarding Academy for several years, and looking at the teacher's house and furnishings, he doesn't look like someone who spends money recklessly. And according to his understanding, a blue-robed wizard like Mr. Dylan gets 2 gold sprinkles a month. Even if Mr. Dylan was a blue-robed wizard before, he would still get at least 5 gold sprinkles a month. How could it be possible to only have this little for so many years? Savings. Yes, Teacher Dylan must be worried about his own money, so he hid it. But he quickly gave up the idea, because after all, it was Teacher Dylan's money, and he had the right to worry and the right not to give it. However, Daniel still wanted to fight for it, so he said weakly, "Teacher Dylan, don't worry, I don't ask you for this money for nothing, I borrowed it from you. I can even tell you about your financial difficulties, even if you can also take the so-called soul contract scroll. If I don't pay you back, I will go to hell and be broken into pieces." Teacher Dylan shook his head and said, "That's not the reason. You misunderstood me. It's not that I don't want to lend you money, but that I really have no money." I saw Teacher Dylan taking out a robe and staff from the cabinet, and said with a proud look on his face, "This is my latest collection." Daniel looked at the exquisite robe and staff and immediately knew what was going on. That was it. "Come on, it seems there is no other way." Daniel said, "To be honest, if I have money, I can become very strong." "How strong?" Teacher Dylan asked. "Haha, Teacher Dylan, you may not believe it," Daniel said confidently, "as long as I have enough money, it will not be a problem for me to win the championship." John Dylan looked at Daniel's expression and didn't know what to think. After a long time, he finally said, "Okay, just take it as a gamble." "Ha," Daniel thought. Sure enough, Teacher Dylan still had some backup plans. Sure enough, Teacher Dylan couldn't have spent all his money just to buy the robe and staff. "So, Mr. Dylan, how much money do you have?" Daniel smiled mischievously. "I really don't have any money now. I'm not lying to you. That set of equipment cost me all my life's savings." Teacher Dylan said. "Yeah, a lot of money can't buy your heart." "Teacher, I understand this. But, what can you do now?" Daniel asked. Teacher Dylan stretched out his hand and said, "Follow me." Daniel grabbed Teacher Dylan's arm, a gust of wind blew by, and they teleported away again with a whoosh. After a teleportation, Daniel and John Dylan were seen standing in front of a large castle. Daniel looked around the castle and felt that the surroundings were quiet and desolate. When they entered, they found that the castle was magnificent and the people inside were busy with their heads down at the counter. After Teacher Dylan's introduction, it turned out that they had arrived at the Wizard's Bank. After being warmly received by a staff member, they came to a counter. John Dylan took out the robe and staff he had just shown to Daniel from a small bag. He handed them to the staff and said, "Please mortgage this for me." The staff took the robe and staff, inspected them carefully, and after making an assessment, they said, 100 gold coins. Then he handed Teacher Dylan a piece of paper. "The mortgage period is 1 month. If you don't redeem it after 1 month, if so, these 2 items belong to this bank. If you agree, just sign." John Dylan looked at the 2 magic weapons and asked weakly, "Can the mortgage time be extended?" The staff member nodded and said, "It can be extended to half a year or 1 year. If it's half a year, I can only give you 80 gold spreads. If you mortgage it for 1 year, I can only give you 40 gold spreads. Is that so?" John Dillon glanced at Daniel and couldn't help but hesitate. Daniel quickly said, "No, just 1 month. Not only will I redeem it for you in 1 month, I will also redeem it for you as a champion." John Dillon nodded and signed directly. Enough is enough, 100 gold coins are enough. Just after Teacher Dillon took the money, Daniel thought he could go back, only to hear Teacher Dillon say, "Excuse me, if I want a loan, how do I apply for it?" Daniel looked at Teacher Dillon, and this time it was his turn to be shocked. "Loan, this is a loan, yes, this is a bank, as long as it is a bank, you can get a loan." However, he didn't expect Teacher Dillon to be so decisive. When he heard about the loan, the staff became enthusiastic. "Sure, come and fill out the form, I will evaluate it for you." As a teacher at the Dawn Wizard Academy, coupled with his good credit, Teacher Dillon had no loan record, so Teacher Dillon could borrow 200 gold. This means that if Teacher Dillon does not get promoted and only earns 2 gold a month, he will need almost 10 years to pay off the loan if he lives frugally. Daniel also asked, "If it were me, how much could I borrow?" The staff glanced at Daniel and said, "As a student, you can't borrow, and do you have an income?" Daniel wanted to say yes, but his job was not a formal job, so it would be useless to say it. John Dillon looked at Daniel again, gritted his teeth and said, "I'll borrow, give me the money." Just like that, John Dillon and Daniel went back with 300 gold. After returning, John Dillon's hands were shaking when he gave the 300 gold coins to Daniel. Chapter 37. Discussing with the teacher. Daniel accepted Bai Hua's 300 gold coins. He did not plan to go back and would stay directly at Teacher Dillon's house. Because he planned to purchase system upgrades directly under the advice and guidance of Teacher Dillon, commonly known as adding points. After Teacher Dillon calmed down, he realized that there was so much money after all. So they took the money and returned to the Wizard Academy's dummy training ground. Although Teacher Dillon didn't understand Daniel's method of improving the power of magic, Daniel now controlled his financial lifeline for 10 years. Therefore, whatever Daniel says now, he just does. Daniel was actually a little worried. He had no idea that Mr. Dillon could do such a great job and actually repay the loan. He secretly cursed himself as a selfish person. He should have asked Mr. Dillon to hold his hand while he was repaying the loan. But he didn't do it later. I am indeed a selfish person, he thought. But at the same time, he felt that he had to win the championship this time, otherwise he would be really sorry for Teacher Dillon. "Teacher Dillon, let me upgrade the frost arrow first and see if it is enough. If not, I will continue to improve it until you think you can defeat the seniors in the qualifiers. Then I will not upgrade the frost arrow. Let's upgrade to something else." Daniel told Teacher Dillon his upgrade plan. "In this case, maybe we can still have some money left." Teacher Dillon found it incredible that how to increase the power of magic seemed to be as simple as eating. "Is it true that if you have money, you can do whatever you want?" Daniel directly upgraded Ice Arrow from LV1 to LV5, and the 70 gold wasted. "Teacher Dillon, I'm ready," Daniel said, "I'm going to cast a spell now and you can see the effect." After saying that, he took an ice arrow and hit it directly at the dummy. Originally, John Dillon didn't have high hopes, but after seeing Daniel launch the upgraded version of the ice arrow, he was surprised. "Is this your upgraded ice arrow?" "Yes," Daniel said, "isn't it powerful enough? 70 gold coins have been spent here. It's only 70 gold." If he could achieve this effect for 70 gold, he would rather spend the money, because it would take John Dillon himself more than 10 years to achieve this effect. John Dillon looked at Daniel, as if he was looking at a monster. "What do you mean, the power is not enough? Your power is already close to mine. Can you achieve this power by spending only 25 gold coins?" Daniel nodded. "John Dillon, who the hell are you?" "I'm Daniel Hawkins." Daniel said sincerely. No, I mean, what the hell are you?" John Dillon said. What am I? I'm not a thing, teacher, I won't let you curse like this." After a while, Daniel realized that it turned out to be "what am I" instead of "who am I." Daniel said, "I am a human being." John Dillon shook his head and expressed that he did not believe it. If Daniel Hawkins said that he was a messenger sent by the ancient gods, or even said that Daniel was the ancient gods themselves, he would find it more credible. Anyway, he did not believe that Daniel was a human being. However, no matter what, Daniel Hawkins' improvement is real, which also gives John Dillon hope of victory. It seems that his investment is right. Teacher Dillon, which one do I need to upgrade? Daniel asked. John Dillon said, while maintaining this level, upgrade the ice shield first, and then upgrade the remaining offensive skills to this level. Daniel nodded. The ice shield was already at LV3. It only cost 45 gold to upgrade to LV5. After adding the previous expenses, he still had 185 gold in hand. As for the remaining Blizzard and Ice Ring, he plans to give priority to upgrading the Ice Ring, because in the arena, they are all one-on-one, so AoE skills like Blizzard are quite useless unless Blizzard can provide different passives. So, Daniel spent another 140 gold to directly upgrade the Ice Ring and Ice Cone techniques to LV5. After the upgrade, he looked at the system panel. Ice Shield LV5. Ice Cone Technique LV5. Ice Arrow LV5. Blizzard LV1. Ice Ring LV5. After turning off the panel, he walked up to Teacher Dillon. Is everything done? Daniel nodded and said, everything is done. Teacher Dillon said, okay, let's get started. Well? Before Daniel could react, Teacher Dillon flashed directly into the distance and released the ice shield. Daniel immediately sensed that Teacher Dillon was going to compete with him based on his intuition from playing games many years before time travel. He found that Teacher Dillon was practicing spells, so he directly used a counter spell on the teacher, directly silencing Teacher Dillon, and then used a sheep transformation spell on Teacher Dillon. I thought I could breathe for a minute, but in less than 10 seconds, Teacher Dillon turned back into a human. But think about it, the sheep transformation technique will take longer to control for simple-minded people. After Teacher Dillon returned to human form, he quickly rubbed the ice arrow. When Daniel saw this, he also rubbed the arrow quickly. Unexpectedly, Daniel's arrow rubbing speed was faster than Teacher Dillon's by 0.5 seconds. Fortunately, Teacher Dillon activated the shield, otherwise the power of this shot would have been quite severe, but his spellcasting was still interrupted. Daniel also stacked a layer of ice pick passive. John Dillon originally thought that Daniel would strike while the iron was hot and continue to rub the ice bolt to increase his passive. Unexpectedly, Daniel fired the passive ice pick directly, and then fired 3 instant ice picks, directly knocking out Teacher Dillon's. The shield was broken. Okay. Teacher Dillon quickly stopped fighting. It had to be said that not only was Daniel's magic powerful, but his fighting skills were also quite mature. He had to ask, where did you learn your fighting skills? Come. Daniel scratched his head and said, you taught me. John Dillon said, I'm pretty sure I didn't teach you any of this. What shocked John Dillon even more was that Daniel had not even opened the shield. In fact, from this level, he had completely lost. He felt very frustrated because he had worked so hard to practice magic. For more than 10 years, it is not as good as a boy spending some money. However, things have to look on the bright side. At least, let alone the competition champion, there is no problem in defeating the second, no, even the first senior in the school in the preliminaries. Daniel saw the teacher's contradictory expression of joy and a bit of frustration, so he flashed in front of the teacher and said, Teacher Dillon, don't be unhappy, at least I saved you some money. After saying that, Daniel took out the remaining 45 gold coins and handed them to Teacher Dillon. Teacher Dillon looked at the money, thought for a while and then said, you can keep it for yourself. You may also need money for the subsequent competitions. Teacher, don't worry, I will definitely redeem your precious equipment. Daniel said, I will definitely win the championship. Teacher Dillon nodded, I believe you. So, Mr. Dillon, I have another question. Daniel asked. As long as it has nothing to do with money. Teacher Dillon thought, his wallet, including his future, had been completely emptied by the boy in front of him. Teacher, do you think I should prepare some good equipment? Daniel said, I will use it for the competition. Teacher Dillon shook his head and said, no need, you will all wear the same robes then, and you are not allowed to bring any accessories or weapons. This is just to prevent equipment suppression. Principal Muller received a thesis review notice from the Wizards Association, saying that a student in his college had recently submitted a thesis. Looking at the notice, Principal Muller felt very strange. It was not the graduation season. Besides, the National Wizarding College competition was coming soon. Which student still had the time to write a thesis? After all, it is not easy to create a new magic move. How many students are stuck and have not graduated, because they have not passed their thesis, or the move they thought of has been developed by predecessors, or it has no application value? The better the Wizarding College, the higher the requirements for papers. Of course, although his Dawn Wizarding College is a newly established college, it does not mean that its requirements are low. Could it be that it was a paper issued by a teacher at the Wizarding Academy? Chapter 38, Big Deal. No, it can't be a teacher. Thinking of this, Principal Muller shook his head repeatedly. Although he founded the Dawn Wizard Academy, he knew very well what the level of the teachers here was. After all, being a teacher in a wizard academy was equivalent to getting a permanent position. In addition, with the establishment of a new academy, it was not easy to hire teachers, and it was even more difficult to hire good teachers. Therefore, the teachers in this academy were not in any danger of competition, let alone innovation. Even some outstanding students, such as the eldest son of the Hawthorne family, were better than most teachers. He hoped that when the eldest son of the Hawthorne family graduated, he would stay in the academy to teach. Just as Principal Muller listed the most likely people, there was a knock at the door. Come in. It turned out that the green-robed wizard, that is, his younger brother, Paul Muller, came in. Paul, it's you, said Principal Muller. I've already told you that you don't need to bring me mashed potatoes anymore. I'll go to the cafeteria to eat. I know, I didn't bring you mashed potatoes. Paul Muller said, I'm here to talk to you about the National Wizard Academy competition. What else is there to talk about? Principal Muller glanced at his pocket watch and thought, the cafeteria hasn't opened yet, and their mashed potatoes taste a little different recently, but they're more delicious. When the Academy's recruitment brochure is published in the future, the condition of good food can be added. Brother. Paul Muller found that Principal Muller seemed distracted, so he reminded him. I've already told you that in the Academy, call me Principal Muller. Principal Muller was startled by his brother's call. There's no one else here, so what's there to be afraid of? Paul said as he sat down and fiddled with the documents on Principal Muller's desk. Oh, do we have students publishing papers? Principal Muller took back the notice from the Wizard Association and then covered the desk with it. Paul, I advise you to follow the rules, otherwise it will be difficult for me to do it. I know. Paul leaned back in the chair and stretched his legs lazily. By the way, about the competition. I know, you want to get more funding, right? Principal Muller also became lazy, crossed his legs and put them on the table and said, I approve it. This time, I don't ask our students to get good grades, but they can't be too shabby. That's not the case. Paul Muller said, it's just that there is a small problem with the selection. What? Principal Muller said. There is a freshman named Daniel Hawkins. Paul Muller said. As soon as he heard the name Daniel Hawkins, Principal Muller quickly put his feet down from the table. Although he was eating the mashed potatoes invented by Daniel, he still seemed to have an allergic reaction to the name. I saw Principal Muller sat up straight, with a serious face, looking at Paul with some disgust in his seriousness. If you don't know, you would think that the person Principal Muller hates is his younger brother. Even Paul Muller was stunned when he saw his brother's expression. Why are you still standing there? Keep talking. Principal Muller's tone became stronger and his voice became higher. He was eager to know what Daniel Hawkins had done. Although Daniel Hawkins' mashed potatoes were delicious, he was very upset when he heard that everyone now said that the cafeteria was Hawkins' cafeteria. Because in his opinion, the entire Morning Light Wizard Academy, all the staff, teachers, and students, every brick and wood, were all his. What made him even more upset was that he was completely helpless about the current situation of the cafeteria. After all, without him, there would be no Dawn Wizard Academy, let alone a cafeteria, and even less Daniel Hawkins. His tuition was waived, but Daniel Hawkins took advantage of it and still acted like a spoiled child. He even made such delicious mashed potatoes, and called them Hawkins mashed potatoes. This was what annoyed him the most. At his brother's urging, Paul Muller hurriedly said, Ahem, Daniel Hawkins, the freshman, also signed up for the National Wizard Academy competition. What did he do? Principal Mueller leaned forward upon hearing this. What did you do? Say it again. Paul Mueller was speechless for a moment when he saw his brother was so excited. After a while, he repeated his words. After hearing this, Principal Mueller's face was stiff, and he leaned back on the chair, not saying a word for a long time. Paul Mueller saw his brother like this. He knew that his brother didn't like Daniel Hawkins. Strictly speaking, his brother didn't like people who took advantage of him since he was a child. He just said to his brother, "Actually, I have an idea." Paul Mueller observed his brother's expression while speaking, and continued, "We can completely ignore this freshman and ignore him. Just treat it as Daniel Hawkins being unreasonable and just grandstanding." Ha ha ha. Principal Mueller suddenly laughed and said, "Brother, grandstanding, this word is well used. So, what do you think, for those who are grandstanding, how should we deal with him?" Paul Mueller scratched his head, not knowing what his brother wanted to do for a while, and just said, or just ignore him as I just said." "No, no, no." Principal Mueller said, "This is a low point. For this kind of immature boy who loves to show off and attract attention, we should praise him." "Praise him?" Paul Mueller said. "Yes, that's right." Principal Mueller said, "Praise him high, and then throw him down hard." "Brother, I still don't understand." Paul Mueller said, "I think we should just ignore him and treat him as a student who is making trouble for no reason." "No, no, no." Principal Mueller said a series of no again, and then said, "Don't we only have 2 places for the competition?" Paul Mueller nodded. "Now there is one more person, which means we have to hold a preliminary competition." Alex Mueller said. Paul Mueller's eyes lit up, and he felt that his brother seemed to understand. Yes, it would be troublesome to hold a preliminary competition. It would be better to treat Daniel Hawkins as a transparent and unreasonable student. At worst, he would be criticized in a notice. So he told Principal Mueller all his thoughts and analysis. "No, no, no." Principal Mueller said, "Brother, you are wrong. If we do what you said and treat Daniel Hawkins as transparent and then report the criticism, we will fall into Daniel Hawkins' trap. People like Daniel will use this to discredit us and even use the poster as evidence to say that we did not respect every applicant." Paul Mueller thought that Daniel Hawkins was questioning him in his office with the poster at that time, otherwise he would not be here to seek his brother's advice. Thinking of this, he nodded and said, "Then what do you say?" "According to me," said Principal Mueller, "we should not only hold a preliminaries, but also hold it in a big way. We should notify all teachers and students to come and watch this preliminaries. Everything should be fair and just. Do you want to sign a life and death agreement?" Paul Mueller said, "Even if it is a preliminaries, it is okay to sign a life and death agreement. That doesn't have to be so extreme." Principal Mueller said, "Although the life and death agreement is a rule since ancient times, our college still needs to carry it forward with the kindness of the ancient gods. This is what makes us different from other colleges, our innovation and our foundation. In fact, for Principal Mueller, it is better to watch Daniel Hawkins being knocked down than to let him be beaten to death on the field. After all, he despises young people who are ambitious, show off, and disobey discipline the most in his life." And, more importantly, when Daniel Hawkins saluted him, the principal, Alex Mueller, as the principal, did not feel the students' admiration for him at all. Even when he met him in the cafeteria or on the road, he did not feel the respect that Daniel deserved as the principal. Humph, even the earls would not be so when they saw him. Why could Daniel, a child born in the slums, be so presumptuous? What can a gentleman endure? Chapter 39. Overall rating. Charlie Matt and Mario Hawthorne are both the first batch of students to enroll in Dawn Wizard Academy. At the same time, although they are only 5 years old, they are still the most precious students of Dawn Wizard Academy. After all, Dawn Wizard Academy has only been established for 5 years. In other words, they are considered veteran students, not to mention that Charlie and Mario are the best and top-ranked students among this batch of veteran students, so it is no exaggeration to call them the most precious students of Principal Alex Mueller. After all, the two of them are the face of Dawn Wizard Academy and the face of Principal Mueller. Because of these two students, Principal Mueller can be very confident when holding meetings at the Wizard Association. Although Mario Hawthorne and Charlie Matt are only 5 years old, they are more capable than students in other academies with 7 years. This is not what Principal Mueller brags about. In addition to Mario and Charlie participating in large and small academy competitions, the tasks they handle are not only much more difficult than those of students from other academies, but even more difficult. They can now even directly take over the tasks entrusted by the Wizard Association. Because of these two top students, everyone praised Principal Mueller for his strong ability to run a school. Because of this, he not only gained the support of the nobles, but the Wizard Association even sometimes allocated funds to the Dawn Wizard Academy. Originally, Charlie and Mario could graduate after the 4th year and go out to directly participate in the task work. However, in order to keep these two children in the academy, Principal Mueller offered various attractive conditions and made an agreement with the Matt family and the Hawthorne family, so that they could not only study for free, but also enjoy the best resources of the academy, and complete 10 years of study to become a truly certified Great Wizard of the academy. In this way, they can even work directly for the King and the Pope in the future. By then, honor, money, and status will all be available. If it is really based on tuition and living expenses, this is indeed not a small amount. Therefore, the Matt family and the Hawthorne family both agreed to Principal Mueller's agreement. However, for Principal Mueller, there is one thing that is not perfect. The noble status of the Matt family is relatively low. They are not even viscounts, but only barons, which is 2 levels lower than Earl Hawthorne. Fortunately, Charles Matt is a very hard-working person. Moreover, no matter how low the nobility is, it is still a noble. In addition, except that Charles Matt is ranked a little lower than Mario Hawthorne, this student is completely impeccable in other aspects. There is also a key class in Charles Matt's class, but there were originally 10 students in the key class. However, later, because Charles Matt and Mario Hawthorne were too outstanding, Principal Mueller simply divided an elite class in the key class, and it was limited to 2 people. Needless to say, Charles Matt and Mario Hawthorne were selected. Although the elite class will be re-evaluated every year, the 2 of them have never fallen down. Moreover, they are directly taught by Principal Mueller himself, and can be said to be Principal Mueller's disciples. For Charlie Martel, no matter what Principal Mueller said to him, he didn't mind. The only thing he cared about was why he had been inferior to Mario Hawthorne for so many years. At first, he thought he was not working hard enough, so he tried his best whether it was a written test, magic practice, or a commissioned task. He didn't understand. He had worked very hard, but at the end of the year, his score was a little lower than Mario's. It was okay in the first 2 years, but he began to doubt the scoring mechanism in the 3rd year. But it was Principal Mueller who participated in the final scoring, so he ran to Principal Mueller more than once to question the score. Take last year, for example, he and Principal Mueller almost had a quarrel over this issue. "Teacher Mueller, I don't accept it," Charlie Martel suddenly asked Principal Mueller during a class, and Mario Hawthorne was standing next to him. "What are you dissatisfied with?" Principal Mueller looked at Charlie with a smile. He had never scolded these 2 beloved disciples. "Why is my score lower than his this time?" Charlie Mart pointed at Mario Hawthorne and said, "I don't care about the previous scores, but I will definitely get the 1st place this time." It was this question again. When Principal Mueller heard this question, he was already unhappy, but he managed his expression very well. He smiled and said, "If you have any objections to the score, my folder is on the desk. You can take it and see it. All the scores are recorded there." Charlie Mart nodded, and then without saying a word, he trotted and jumped to the podium. After flipping out their score papers from Principal Mueller's folder, he carefully read and calculated. In fact, Charlie Mart admitted most of the calculation methods, and especially in the task entrustment, his score was obviously higher than Mario Hawthorne. In theory, it is impossible to lose to Mario Hawthorne, until he saw a column called Comprehensive Score. His score was much lower than Mario Hawthorne's. Comprehensive score? Charlie Martel asked in confusion. "Teacher Mueller, why is there a comprehensive score this time? What is this? There was no such thing before." "Yeah, this was added this year." Principal Mueller said, "I don't want our college to be just a college that competes with knowledge and magic. I think the mental state and overall quality of students are also very important. Therefore, I added an extra dimension to the scoring this time, which is the so-called comprehensive scoring." "Teacher Mueller, you still didn't answer my question. I know that it is a scoring dimension, but what are the specific scoring items and how are they scored?" Charlie Matt said. Faced with Charlie's questioning, Principal Mueller became more and more unhappy. He only heard him say, "It's what your classmates think of you, what your teachers think of you, and what I think of you." Charlie Matt heard it and glanced at Mario Hawthorne next to him. He saw that he was smiling at him. This smile made Charlie very unhappy. "Teacher, I still don't agree with your statement. Because other people's opinions are very subjective, and once subjectivity becomes a scoring standard, he doesn't know where to start working hard." Dissatisfied? What do you have to disagree with? Teacher Mueller's tone began to become stronger. "Are you questioning my grading standards? Many classmates and teachers say that you are too arrogant and proud. If you can be more humble, behave better in class, stop talking back at the teacher, be more friendly to others, and not ignore your classmates' questions, your overall score will be higher." Chapter 40. Unless there is an unexpected surprise. After listening to Principal Mueller's words, Charlie Martel probably felt that his score would never be higher than Mario Hawthorne's. Even if he was furious and pointed at Mario Hawthorne and said he wanted to go out for a duel, it would be useless even if he won Mario. He would still be the second forever. In fact, Charlie Martel's feeling was right. From the most recent year-end evaluation, it was because Principal Mueller found that Charlie Martel's score was higher than Mario Hawthorne's that he had to come up with the comprehensive evaluation. After all, Earl Hawthorne was the biggest supporter of the Morning Wizard Academy, so how could he be overshadowed by a baron? Therefore, no matter how much Charlie Martel disobeyed, he could not accept it. Moreover, after this incident, Principal Mueller had a slight resistance to Charlie Martel in his heart, but he only hated that there was no one to replace Charlie Martel, so he just let it go. After all, as a principal, he couldn't be so tolerant. Principal Mueller tried to convince himself that he had brought up Charlie Martel himself. If that was the case, no matter how many shortcomings Charlie had, he should be tolerated. Knock, 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 there was a knock on the door, and Principal Mueller said while he was busy dealing with documents, "Come in." "Teacher, you are looking for me?" Charlie Martel said after entering the door. "Yes," Principal Mueller said without looking up, his eyes still on a pile of documents. "The preliminaries are coming soon." "Oh, teacher, don't worry, I will definitely get good results in the competition, I have done everything possible." Charlie Martel suddenly realized something and said, "Hey, wait, preliminaries? What preliminaries?" After Principal Mueller roughly recounted the process of Daniel Hawkins' registration, he said earnestly, "Therefore, you are now going to fight with this Daniel Hawkins." "Fight? Fight what?" Charlie Martel just thought this matter was ridiculous. Why not Mario Hawthorne to fight? "Instead, you want me to fight." Principal Mueller raised his head slightly, glanced upward, squeezed out a bunch of wrinkles and said, "Don't forget, Mario Hawthorne is the first, you are the second, and now someone comes to challenge, of course, let the second go first." "Okay, this is the reason again, and besides, he doesn't accept this second place at all." Charlie Martel wanted to say something, but after the last argument with Principal Mueller, he felt that there was no need to say anything now, so he said nothing and slammed the door and left. What attitude! After seeing Charlie Mart leave, although Principal Mueller's eyes returned to the documents, he was writing with his quill pen, but suddenly he clenched it and threw it towards the door, lowering his voice and cursing secretly, "I spent so much effort to cultivate you, you ungrateful guy." In the next few days, Charlie Mart was in a very bad mood. After all, it was an insult to him to let a fifth-year wizard fight with a freshman. Not only that, even Mario Hawthorne laughed at him, so impressive. In addition, other classmates, even junior students and teachers pointed at him and made sarcastic remarks. He simply asked for leave at home before the start of the preliminaries. Daniel Hawkins still had 45 gold in his hand. It seemed unnecessary to use this money to upgrade the system. It was used to buy equipment, but the competition did not allow equipment suppression. But such a sum of money was in his hand. Besides, this money was loaned by Teacher Dylan, which means that every day is interest. It's a pity that there are no stocks or funds in this world, otherwise, he would have the confidence to make a big upgrade of this money. Just when he and his cousin Henry Hawkins were bored in the cafeteria, he heard some students talking while getting food. "Tomorrow is the preliminaries, the odds are 1 to 40, who do you bet on to win?" "Nonsense, although the odds are high, I will definitely bet on Charles Martel to win." "Ha ha ha, don't you want to be upset? Upset? What's the point of being upset with a lunatic? I don't want to go against money. Besides, I've put all my living expenses in this month. Although I won't lose much after winning, at least I can improve my food. Daniel Hawkins listened to their conversation and couldn't help but ask directly, "Excuse me, 2 seniors, what is the 1 to 40 I just heard you talking about?" The 2 seniors were startled, thinking that the teacher had heard what they were saying, so they came to interrogate him. But when they saw the badge on Daniel's robe, they knew he was a freshman, so they waved and said, "Go, go, eat what you should eat, don't ask what you shouldn't ask." Daniel Hawkins continued to ask, but the 2 seniors refused to say anything and still drove him away. Henry Hawkins said, "Brother, don't bother the seniors." "Brother, you are right." Daniel Hawkins nodded and went straight into the kitchen. After a while, he brought 2 plates of delicious steaks to the 2 seniors. The 2 seniors saw the delicious food Daniel brought and said in surprise, What are you doing?" "Nothing. I just think the 2 seniors are handsome, and I think it would be nice to treat the 2 seniors to a meal to show my appreciation," Daniel Hawkins said. The 2 seniors looked at each other and finally said, "Junior, thank you for your kindness, but even so, I won't say a word to you." I understand. I have no other thoughts. I just admire the 2 seniors and simply want to treat them to a meal." Daniel said, "You eat first, I won't disturb you." The 2 seniors saw that Daniel Hawkins had really left, so they started eating. Steak. Many towns are now suffering from famine. Although Chinexai town is relatively wealthy, the price of food has also increased. Therefore, they can barely eat steak once a month with their living expenses. Faced with such tempting food, the 2 seniors couldn't resist it at all and started to feast on it. Just as they were about to leave after eating, Daniel Hawkins came up again and said, "What do you 2 seniors think of the steak?" "The steak is delicious," the 2 seniors looked at each other and said, "Nevertheless, I still can't tell you the question you just asked." I know, I'm not here for this." Daniel continued, "Again, I just admire you seniors." After saying that, Daniel waved his hand directly to the kitchen, and Henry Hawkins came up with 2 plates of Hawkins mashed potatoes. Chapter 41. Black Bear. The 2 seniors looked at the 2 plates of Hawkins mashed potatoes that were served, then looked at Daniel Hawkins and said, "Junior, you really don't have to do this. Why don't you do this?" "Seniors, don't think too much about it. I just admire you." Daniel smiled. Facing the fragrant mashed potatoes, the 2 seniors naturally refused to accept any comer. After they finished enjoying the mashed potatoes, wiped their mouths, and were about to get up to leave again, they heard Daniel, a junior, coming up to him again. "Road. 2 seniors, don't leave in a hurry." Daniel quickly stopped them with a smile and said, "You still have soup." At this time, Henry Hawkins brought 2 large bowls of soup. "What kind of soup is this?" one of the seniors asked. "This is Hawkins cream fruit and vegetable soup," Daniel said. "This is also a new dish, you are the first to taste it." "Ah, this." This time, the 2 seniors didn't even finish the soup and said directly, "Junior, I can only tell you one name, the rest is up to you." "Yes, okay, thank you, senior, for your advice." Daniel smiled. I saw one of the seniors hooking his finger at Daniel, and heard one senior say in a low voice, "Go to the alchemy department. On the wooden door of the first toilet cubicle, you will see the word Black Bear. Look for it. Be careful and there will be detailed instructions." When Daniel Hawkins first heard the name, he felt confused, but after the senior finished speaking and drank the cream soup, he left without looking back. However, this was actually enough for Daniel. Black Bear was nothing more than industry slang. Forget it, don't think about it. Time waits for no one, so after he simply lied to Henry, he directly head towards the alchemy department. Along the way, he couldn't help but wonder, could the Black Bear be a teacher? Or maybe a student? Whether it is a teacher or a student, if they are caught, they will definitely not be able to take advantage of it. After all, the risk is too great. After he arrived at the alchemy department, he followed the instructions directly to the first toilet cubicle. After searching for a long time, he finally found the word Black Bear on the fold of the wooden door. He searched further at the bottom and found the so-called step. Go to the 3rd field and pick the first anemone. So Daniel did it. "What are you doing?" When Daniel picked off the anemones, he heard a sharp sound coming from behind. He thought it was a black bear coming, but when he turned around, he saw that it was the teacher of the alchemy department who was leading Alan Hawthorne and others to plant anemones. "Ah, teacher, Daniel said in a panic. "I remember you. Aren't you in the key class? You were punished several times, but this time it's finally your turn," the alchemy teacher said. "Ah, no, teacher, you are right, I was punished," Daniel said. Just when Daniel was thinking about how to excuse himself, the alchemy teacher laughed and said, "Tell me, what do you want from the black bear?" "Black bear? What's a black bear? What's a black bear?" Daniel laughed. "Hey, wait," he asked tentatively, "Teacher, are you a black bear?" "Daniel Hawkins, you're here to buy potions, right? Hurry up, don't waste my time. If it weren't for the fact that you have to compete tomorrow, I would have kicked you out," Teacher Black Bear continued. "However, it was a wise choice for you to secretly buy the potion. I have a bottle of potion here, which is newly developed. Can you increase my magic power?" Daniel became interested after hearing this. "No," Teacher Black Bear said, "however, this bottle of magic potion can at least prevent you from dying all at once. In other words, it can allow you to at least take care of your funeral with a sigh of relief." "Yeah, I understand," Daniel thought, it was nothing more than a famous sword, and he just heard him say, "However, I'm not here to buy medicine this time, I'm here to place a bet." "Place a bet?" Teacher Black Bear raised his eyelids. "Ah. I understand. You want to leave some money to your parents before you die. I understand this too." After saying that, he took out the money from his pocket. A notebook and a quill. After opening the notebook, he licked the tip of the quill with his tongue and said, "Tell me, how much do you want to bet?" 45 gold spreads. "How much?" Teacher Black Bear's eyes widened and he couldn't believe his ears. Daniel originally thought about raising his voice and shouting again, but after looking at the surrounding environment, he felt that it was better to keep a low profile, so he leaned into Teacher Black Bear's ear and whispered, 45 gold scatters. After Teacher Haixian calmed down for a while, he thought, "Where did you get so much money?" "Don't worry about it," Daniel said, "just tell me whether I can place a bet." Teacher Black Bear nodded, Okay, let me make it clear first. The odds are now 1 to 40. Also, don't think about reporting me. Once you report me, not only will I be fine, but on the contrary, you will die miserably." "I know, I still understand these rules, don't worry," Daniel said, but he secretly complained in his heart that this teacher is really ethical. "Okay, then give me the money now," Teacher Black Bear said, "the handling fee is 10%. This is too boring," Daniel complained. "You don't have to place a bet, it's still too late to leave now," Teacher Black Bear said. Okay, Daniel handed him a bag of money. After taking the money, Teacher Black Bear shook the purse and said with experience, "I didn't expect you to have so much money." "Okay, Daniel Hawkins bets on Charlie Martel to win." "Wait!" Daniel hurriedly called out. "What did you suddenly call out? You scared me to death." Teacher Black Bear was so scared that he closed the betting book and looked back. "Teacher Black Bear, don't make a mistake. I don't want to bet on Charlie Martel," Daniel said, "I want to bet on Daniel Hawkins." "What?" Teacher Black Bear said, "You want to bet on yourself? Are you sure?" Daniel shook his head, "No, it's me." "Write it down quickly." Teacher Black Bear looked unbelievable. He opened the book and wrote down Daniel's betting requirements. Daniel was still worried and ran to him to watch. "Don't worry, you don't have to do this." After saying that, I saw Teacher Black Bear took out a note from his arms, and then wrote on the note. National Wizard Academy Competition, Dawn Wizard Academy Qualifiers, Daniel Hawkins bet 45 gold on Daniel Hawkins, the handling fee is 10% of the bet. Wow, I didn't expect there was a receipt. Daniel couldn't help laughing when he looked at the receipt. "What are you laughing at?" Teacher Black Bear said. "Nothing, I just didn't expect you to be so formal," Daniel said. "Of course, for so many years, it's all based on word of mouth." Teacher Black Bear closed the notebook and said, "Finally, I warn you again, don't think of reporting me." Chapter 42. Universal Celebration. Black Bear watched Daniel leave and couldn't help but think that this kid was crazy, and he was quite crazy. I thought Daniel was buying the other person to win. After all, the odds were 1 to 1. If he won, he would earn at least half of the money. Unexpectedly, he actually bought himself to win, and judging from his appearance, he seemed quite confident. Is this kid Daniel really sure? Thinking of this, Black Bear couldn't help but break into a cold sweat. If Daniel wins, he will have to compensate 40 times, that is. He did the math and deducted the 10% handling fee. The principal amount was 40.5 gold. If the compensation was 40 times, that would be. He couldn't help but swallowed. Oh my god, it was 1,620. Jinsha. No, 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 it's impossible, Black Bear quickly comforted himself, even if that boy Daniel took the most powerful potion, he still wouldn't be able to defeat the 5th-year wizard. What's more, he did admit that Daniel was a very talented student, but the last time he saw him, he only learned how to warp time. Hehe, scare yourself. Today is the first day of the Grand Qualifiers. It can be said to be a day of celebration for everyone. Among the activities held by the Wizarding Morning Academy in the 5 years since its establishment, this time the qualifying competition was unprecedentedly lively. All the students and teachers, especially Principal Muller, are wearing a brand new red robe this year, and even the cuffs are embroidered with gold-edged patterns. Especially his few sparse Mediterranean hair, which was specially neatly styled. Those hairs even reflected light, and the top of his head seemed to be inlaid with several absolutely parallel black wires. In order to make Daniel Hawkins more embarrassed, Principal Mueller said to Daniel, pretending to be concerned before school yesterday afternoon, "Daniel, are you ready for tomorrow's game?" "Well, you're ready," Daniel said decisively. Humph, Principal Mueller thought to himself, he was too stubborn to talk when death was imminent, but he still said with a smile on his face, "Just be ready." "To be honest, kid, I am also very optimistic about you." "Oh." Daniel said, "Thank you, Principal." "You're welcome," Principal Mueller said, "Well, let's call your parents here tomorrow." "Ah." Daniel was quite surprised, "Call my parents here? Why is that?" "This will allow them to appreciate your wonderful performance tomorrow." After Principal Mueller finished speaking, he thought to himself, "Let your parents see how you make a fool of yourself tomorrow." But, of course Daniel knew what Principal Mueller, the old bidden, was thinking, but it didn't matter, so he said, "Ah. Dear Principal, I also really hope that my parents can come to this great Morning Wizard Academy, they even feel that it is a great honor to step into your academy." Principal Mueller nodded and said, "That's fine. Then what are you waiting for? Let them come over tomorrow and I'll write you a note." But what?" Principal Mueller became impatient, "If you have anything to say, just say it." "Principal Mueller, you also know that we are from the slums." Daniel pretended to be pitiful and aggrieved, "If we let them come tomorrow, we would have to stop work for a day, and that would be simple. Although I can't do anything about your parents' situation, I can apply for other financial subsidies for you as a student." Principal Mueller said, "Moreover, I will apply for you so that your parents don't have to spend money in our dining hall." Money. Daniel thought to himself, yes, he has already taken care of the kitchen. As long as the surname is Hawkins, there is no need to spend money. However, Daniel still said, "My brother Henry Hawkins is also a student here, so his parents also can my uncle and aunt come together." Principal Mueller's face twitched. It was really uncomfortable to face such an ungrateful student like Daniel. However, he still thought about it. If all the relatives of this kid Daniel came, that would be fine. Let him not only study and I can't hold my head up in school, and I can't hold my head up in front of my relatives either. Okay, let them all come. Principal Mueller patted Daniel's shoulder generously and said, "Whether it's your uncle or aunt, as long as they are your relatives, anyone who wants to come can come." "Thank you Principal Mueller, dear Principal Mueller, great Principal Mueller." Daniel's series of compliments made Principal Mueller feel strange again. Principal Mueller couldn't help but wonder how this kid managed to make people feel so uncomfortable when he was praising others. He couldn't explain exactly where he felt uncomfortable. For Susan Hawkins, she never thought that she would one day step into the Sacred Wizarding Academy, and all this was thanks to her nephew Daniel. In the past, she would have kept telling Henry to learn more from her brother, but this time, she would not do it, because in her eyes, Daniel this time was just a crazy, proud, and pushy boy. That's all. It's a pity. She couldn't help but feel pity for Daniel. Although she had a bad impression of Daniel at first, but now she saw Daniel participating in a suicidal game. Alas, she couldn't help but sigh. At this time, she kept warning Henry. Don't imitate your brother. Apart from Susan and William's family, the people in the audience were most worried about Rob and Emma. Although they also entered the Wizarding Academy and even sat in the audience in the VIP seats specially arranged by Principal Mueller, this pair the couple had no smiles on their faces. Daniel's two younger brothers Henry and David were also sitting in the VIP seats. As long as they cheered for their brother, they would be greeted with countless boos, so they could only remain silent. Especially Henry Hawkins, who found Mr. Black Bear under the recommendation of his brother. Although Daniel kept reminding him to bet on his brother to win, Henry still decided to put all his living expenses on Charlie Martel. Although Henry also wanted his brother to win, he still respected objective laws in the face of absolute objective reality. The students were all sighing that the entire preliminaries were made like a formal competition by President Mueller, which was very grand. In fact, everyone wanted to see how the legendary Daniel Hawkins dared to challenge Charlie Martel. Was Daniel crazy, or did he look down on Charlie Martel, or did he look down on the entire college's teaching system? In the teacher's seat, a teacher said to Teacher Dillon. "Hey, John, is that your student?" John Dillon nodded and said nothing. "You're great. You've taught such a genius." After hearing this, the other teachers all laughed. "I wouldn't even want such a genius." Teacher Dillon looked at him blankly. The teacher quickly said, No, Teacher Dillon, don't get me wrong, it's just that I can't handle such a genius. After all, I'm not as skilled as you. I'd better teach some more normal students, ha ha ha." Chapter 43. Who wears protective gear? The four nobles represented by Alan Hawthorne were also chattering in the audience. Needless to say, they also had a bad impression of Daniel Hawkins. Although they were pessimistic, they had to take some practical actions. Not only did these four guys invest all their savings in Charlie Martel, but they were even crazier. They directly borrowed 10 gold coins from Teacher Black Bear. Not only them, but even many students borrowed more or less. This was very strange. It happened yesterday afternoon. Teacher Black Bear secretly spread the news that he could borrow money, but the monthly interest rate was 3%. Although the interest rate was high, this group of students still rushed to borrow money. Teacher Black Bear evaluated them based on their family status and tried to borrow the most money. He also said very nicely, "I will try my best to get you a higher amount." The students rushed to thank Teacher Black Bear, and then they put all the borrowed money on Charlie Martel. Besides, those who can borrow money and those who borrow money are almost all nobles. The reason why Mr. Black Bear did this was purely to spread the risk. Although the possibility was small, it did not mean that it was completely impossible. If Daniel Hawkins really won, he would not lose too much according to the high-interest loan. Otherwise, his superiors would be dissatisfied. After Henry Hawkins learned about this, he wanted to borrow money, but he thought that he was born in the slums and could not borrow much money. Moreover, he might have to endure the sarcasm of the noble students and Mr. Black Bear, so he gave up. After everyone sat down for a while, everyone couldn't wait to see the fight between Daniel Hawkins and Charlie Martel, but how could Principal Mueller let a game start so easily? This was the time when all the teachers and students of the school were gathered together. He had to take this opportunity to expand or consolidate his influence, so he gave another speech, thanking the ancient gods, thanking all the teachers and students, and recounting the short 5-year history of the academy, including the plans for the next few years, the vision for the future, the trust in the teachers, and the expectations for the students. In this way, after a long and boring speech, Principal Mueller finally received sparse applause. Principal Mueller was in a bad mood, thinking that if he hadn't founded this academy, they would have no academy to go to, and if he hadn't taken them in, according to their qualifications, they would never be able to become wizards. Because they couldn't get into other academies at all. As Principal Mueller announced the start of the competition, thunderous applause broke out instantly. The principal put away the echoing technique expressionlessly, curled his lips, and returned to his seat. When Charles Martel appeared, the whole audience burst into applause and cheers. Some people clapped, some whistled, and some witches even shouted, "My dear Charlie, I want to give birth to a child for you. I want to give birth to. I want to give birth to. Principal Mueller was even more unhappy when he saw this scene, and couldn't help but mutter, "Why didn't you see such enthusiasm when I was giving a speech just now?" His brother Paul Mueller beside him couldn't help but joked, "Why, do you also want them to give birth to a child for you?" Principal Mueller was so anxious that his face turned red when he heard it, and he cursed in a low voice, "How can you talk like this? You can't say these words casually. Don't say them in the future. Do you know that I have teacher ethics? It's just a joke." Paul Mueller said. "You can't even joke." Principal Mueller blushed. "Okay, okay." Paul Mueller quickly raised his hands in surrender and said, "I won't say it anymore." Although Charlie Martel is the second best in the Academy and is not a high-ranking noble, he is much more popular than Alan Hawthorne. The main reason is that he is handsome and a little cold at ordinary times. The witches in the Academy really like this. Moreover, everyone with a discerning eye knows that Charlie Martel's magic level has actually surpassed Alan Hawthorne. Therefore, when Charlie Martel faced the so-called comprehensive score, he was so dissatisfied. After all, he also knew that he was popular. With the introduction of the host, Daniel Hawkins finally appeared. As soon as Daniel appeared, the treatment he received was completely different from the warm applause of Charlie Martel. On the contrary, he was greeted with boos, and even insults. "Charlie, beat this ignorant boy flat. That's right, look at him, I heard that he is not even a noble, he just wants to be famous on purpose. Charlie, you can't show mercy, let him learn a lesson." Daniel listened to their shouting and thought, "I am not worse than Charlie, why doesn't anyone want to have a child with me?" Alas, it seems that it is still a problem of identity and strength. It seems that I am still too narcissistic. Rob Hawkins' family felt very uncomfortable when they heard them scolding their son like this. Principal Mueller felt quite comfortable when he saw that Rob and others looked unhappy. After Daniel Hawkins and Charlie Martel stood at the designated positions, before the fight began, the host said to Charlie Martel, "Before the fight begins, Mr. Martel, do you have anything to say to your opponent, Mr. Hawkins? Although there is no honor in defeating him, I will not show mercy to respect my opponent. I hope Mr. Hawkins can stand up after being hit by my ice arrow." As soon as Charlie Martel finished speaking, there was another round of applause and cheers. The host nodded, and then said to Daniel, "Mr. Hawkins, what do you say to Mr. Matt?" "Oh, I hope the senior can still show mercy," Daniel said with fear. "Then why don't you withdraw from the competition now?" Charlie Martel said with a sharp look at Daniel. There was another round of applause. "Wow, Charlie is so handsome. Charlie is so domineering. Fuck Charlie, don't show mercy." "Humph, are you scared now? Daniel is just a clown who is trying to attract attention." At this time, the host brought 2 cloaks, handed them to them and said, "Put them on." Charlie Martel asked, "What is this?" "Magic protective cloak, it's protective gear," said the host. "Why do you have to wear it?" Charlie Martel's tone was cold, and even the host was a little scared. He only heard the host reply, "Ah? Don't you wear protective gear in the competition?" Charlie Martel couldn't help but narrow his eyes when he heard it, expressing his disbelief. "Do you have to wear protective gear in the competition? Why do you have to wear protective gear? Say it again that you have to wear protective gear in the competition. Please take a look at the previous competitions and see who wore protective gear." Chapter 44, The Sorrowful Wildness. That's right, why wear protective gear? If you're afraid of death, don't come to the competition. People in the audience shouted. "Look, the freshman is wearing protective gear, ha ha ha." They all laughed when they saw Daniel Hawkins put on a cloak. "Mr. Matt," the host said, "you'd better put on protective gear." "No, he can put it on, I don't need it," Charlie Matt said. "You'd better put it on, this is the rule of President Mueller, and it's not easy for me to do it otherwise." Charlie Matt put on the protective cloak after the host insisted on persuading him. After seeing that they were all dressed, the host nodded to the 2 contestants and announced, "The Dawn Wizard Academy National Competition Trials will start now." The whole audience cheered and shouted, "Kill him, kill him." Charlie Matt looked at Daniel and said sarcastically, "Do you want me to give you 3 moves?" He thought Daniel would refuse his proposal in the face of ridicule, but he only heard Daniel laugh. Daniel cast an ice shield first, then asked him, "Why don't you make a shield first?" "No, just come on," Charlie Martel said. "You should make a shield." Daniel looked at the upper right corner, and after seeing Charlie's value, he suggested, "I'm really afraid that something will happen to you." "What did you say?" Charlie Martel said, "This is a big joke." The competition arena was echoed, so the audience could hear their conversation. "Didn't you just say that you won't show mercy to respect your opponent?" Daniel said, "You'd better try your best." "What a big tone, okay, then I'll send you to see the ancient god," Charlie Martel said, and immediately cast an ice arrow, thinking, "I can finish you in one move." Daniel interrupted his spell with a spell counter. Charlie Martel was shocked, he didn't expect that he could actually counter spells, this is a high-level magic. Daniel was seen casting the sheep transforming spell on Charlie. Charlie wanted to use a spell to counter Daniel. Just when Charlie was about to cast a spell, Daniel interrupted his spell in advance, so Charlie's spell counter-attack was in vain. "It's over," Charlie thought, "what's going on?" He hasn't figured out what happened, just heard a puff, he turned into a sheep. That's right, Daniel took the initiative to interrupt his spell, just to trick the opponent's spell counter-attack. All the audience on the stage fell silent, but Daniel danced in front of the stage, pretending to say, "Wow, my sheep transforming spell was successful, great." The audience thought it was incredible, how could it be possible, what was going on, how could senior Charlie Matt be turned into a sheep by a freshman, and when did he learn the spell counter-attack? But it doesn't matter, experienced audiences thought that senior Charlie Matt was much higher than Daniel after all, so the sheep transforming spell would not take effect for too long, and it would be good to last for 5 seconds. However, as time went by, they found that it was almost a minute, and senior Charlie Mart was still a sheep. It was impossible, absolutely impossible. During this minute, Daniel Hawkins yawned, stretched, danced around the sheep, and then made a scissors hand gesture to the audience. "What is that spell?" The student wizards on the stage followed suit. Daniel found that it was almost done, and just when Senior Mart was about to turn back into a human, he directly shot an ice arrow at Charlie Mart, and the casting speed was also very fast. The longest casting time of an ice arrow for a freshman can reach 20 seconds, but Daniel only needs 3 seconds, which is completely the level of a teacher. As soon as the sheep turning spell failed, when Charlie Mart just turned back into a human, he hadn't reacted yet, and a direct ice arrow hit him, and he froze in place. Charlie Martel's heart was as cold as his body at this moment. Although he could also cast spells, he found that Daniel's casting speed was faster than his, and there was a layer of ice cone passive on Daniel's head, which was what scared him. If this ice cone hit him, he would definitely go to see the ancient god. Just when he was afraid that Daniel would passively launch the ice cone, he saw Daniel actively dispel the ice cone on his head. After a while, Charlie Martel fell directly to the ground. Daniel walked in front of Charlie Martel, squatted down and said, "I told you to get a shield. Look at you, fortunately you have a protective cloak. You thought about not wearing protective gear at first, otherwise, hee." Charlie Martel stared at Daniel with his eyes, full of complex emotions such as dissatisfaction, anger, shame, and regret. It is estimated that even Charlie Martel himself could not figure out his feelings at the moment. Daniel looked at the host, who opened his mouth wide and stared at the two of them in a daze. After a while, Daniel said, "Host, I think he can't fight anymore." The host was frightened by Daniel's shouting, and he went to the front of the stage with a hum and an ah. After checking Charlie Martel for a while, the host announced in disbelief, "The winner this time, Daniel Hawkins of the first school year." The whole audience was quiet, no one dared to speak, no one dared to believe it. After being quiet for a while, Rob Hawkins immediately started to roar in battle, "Hawkins! Hawkins! Daniel! Hawkins!" The roar echoed throughout the stadium, and the sound was no less than the wizard's echo spell, especially the momentum, which was very good. Mother Emma also used all her strength to scream, "Good job, son, Hawkins, Hawkins!" As she spoke, she pulled her brother David to shout together. Uncle William Hawkins shouted and waved his hands in a large and regular manner, "Hawkins, Hawkins!" However, his waving amplitude was too large, and the ash from the pipe spilled on the teacher next to him. The teacher next to him stood up quickly, slapping the ash off his body while disdainfully. Aunt Susan Hawkins also shouted, thinking about what big dish to cook for her nephew tonight. Cousin Henry Hawkins was naturally happy to see his brother win, but he was also quite complicated because his living expenses were gone again. However, fortunately, he did not borrow money from Black Bear, otherwise he would have cried. The whole audience watched the Hawkins family shouting, and then suddenly a student shouted, "Ah, lost, lost, all lost." This student's shouting brought everyone back to reality, and they heard, "Lost, lost, finished." This sentence resounded throughout the stadium. For a moment, the entire stadium, except for the Hawkins family, was filled with wailing. Chapter 45, Richard Plan, Minister of Finance. Early the next morning, Principal Alex Mueller held an emergency meeting. In the past, meetings were generally only held by teachers in orange, yellow and green robes, and were considered high-level meetings. However, the meetings between orange robes and yellow robes teachers generally have to take students who have been in 3 years or above to do tasks, so they basically have to deal with the green-robed wizard in charge of finances. But this time it was completely different. Principal Mueller could be said to have called all the teachers, even the lowest-level purple-robed wizards, and held an all-staff meeting early in the morning. Principal Mueller's main focus this time was on Daniel Hawkins' defeat of Charlie Martel. It was obvious that Principal Mueller's haggard face proved that he had not slept all night. To be honest, Principal Mueller didn't really want to hold this meeting. However, time waits for no one, and the National Wizarding Academy competition is coming soon. He wants to submit the final list, but now there is a big difference in this list. Doubt. The reason why he didn't sleep all night was simply that he couldn't believe that Daniel Hawkins could defeat Charlie Mart. He thought that Charlie Mart lost on purpose. Why did he lose on purpose? It might be because of that comprehensive rating to vent his anger. But he later felt that the possibility was very low, and it could be said to be basically impossible. As his own student, he knew Charlie Matt very well. No matter how angry Charlie was, he would never joke about such a formal competition. Moreover, he went to Charlie Matt's house to visit that night, and based on the extent of the injury, it was determined that Daniel had been injured. But the question comes again, where did Daniel Hawkins come from such great ability? Did Daniel Hawkins hide his abilities on purpose? No, it's impossible. After all, there are strict controls when enrolling. Just like the previous detection of magic blank spots is one of the prevention and control measures, which is to prevent wizards pretending to be students from mixing in. Most wizards who pretend to be students are spies of hostile forces. He stayed up all night. In addition to secretly cursing and looking down on Daniel Hawkins, he also spent the night investigating the Hawkins family. After all, he is also afraid that there is a spy from a hostile force in his academy. However, even if it is a spy, if he discovers it in time, it will be more merit than fault for the Wizards Association. If you think about it, it is a good thing, and he is even looking forward to it. Daniel Hawkins is a spy. However, after a night of thorough investigation, he discovered that the Hawkins family were just down-and-out commoners who had been deprived of their noble title. Principal Mueller couldn't help but wonder if the world was deliberately against him, because since Daniel Hawkins entered school, everything he expected did not always go as he expected. Thinking of this, he was even more sure that Daniel was his nemesis. During the entire meeting, no teacher dared to speak first. It was also the most comprehensive meeting in history where orange-robed and yellow-robed wizards gathered together. Let's talk about it. After staying up all night and running around all night to investigate the Hawkins family, and because he is getting older, his voice is very hoarse now, everyone can talk freely, talk about yesterday. Game. For the teachers, they understand that this is not just a matter of two students, Daniel Hawkins and Charlie Matt, competing against each other, but also the teacher behind them. Fortunately, the teacher behind Daniel Hawkins is John Dillon, who has been promoted for about half a year, and the teacher behind Charlie Matt is Principal Mueller. This means that he is a student of Principal Mueller, or a protégé. Students who lost to John Dillon. In this meeting, the teachers present were all thinking about how to speak. Anyway, as long as they didn't say everything clearly, it would have nothing to do with them if there were any problems. Therefore, their understanding was that the principal held this temporary meeting and informed when he said it so seriously. They even did not hesitate to call back the orange-robed and yellow-robed wizards who were performing tasks outside. Then they speculated that there was only one possibility, that is, Principal Mueller probably did not want to admit the result of this competition. In this case, just follow Principal Mueller's wishes. I only heard one teacher say, I think there was something wrong with yesterday's game. Yes, there was definitely something wrong with yesterday's game. How could a freshman beat a fifth-year student? Yes, this is clearly a scam. Principal Mueller, you should investigate thoroughly. Others agreed. Mr. Dillon, cough. Principal Mueller coughed slightly. Daniel Hawkins is your student, what do you think? All eyes are on John Dillon. First of all, I don't think there's anything wrong with Daniel Hawkins. John Dillon knew what was going on. He didn't sleep all night, but he was so excited that he stayed up all night. Hey? So you think there is no problem with Daniel Hawkins, but there is a problem with Charlie Martel. A green-robed wizard of the same level said in a strange tone. No, don't talk nonsense, I just said that this game is completely fair and just. John Dillon said. Come on, everyone knows that this is impossible. Another wizard also joined the chat. To be honest, they all looked down on John Dillon. There were many reasons why they didn't like John Dillon. First, John Dillon was a down-and-out nobleman. Second, he had a rather stubborn personality and was not popular. Third, they thought John Dillon was just a newly promoted green-robed wizard, and he was still a relationship with the principal, and he was a relationship that was not important. Therefore, they took this opportunity to teach John Dillon a little lesson. Yes, the problem is definitely with Daniel Hawkins. Teacher Dillon, did you use black magic potions on your students? Upon hearing this, John Dillon became anxious. No, I didn't. Look, John Dillon became anxious, and everyone laughed. You still say no? Otherwise, how do you explain it? John Dillon was not good at speaking. When faced with injustice, he didn't know what to say when he got anxious. For a long time, he couldn't say a word except for his face turning red. Okay, stop it. A low and steady voice came out, and everyone looked over and found that it was the green-robed wizard Richard Plan. Richard Plan was briefly introduced by Principal Mueller when the new students first entered the school. Although Richard Plan was also a green-robed wizard and the Minister of Finance, he was originally assigned directly by the Wizard Association, but after several years of deployment and operation by Principal Mueller, his real power has been gradually marginalized and he is just a nominal minister. The one who really manages the finances is his younger brother Paul Mueller. Richard Plan can do nothing about it. Chapter 46. The results of the competition are open and fair. You have to know, Richard Plant said, accusing a teacher of using black magic potions on students is a very serious accusation. If there is no evidence, don't make nonsense. John Dillon couldn't help but breathed a sigh of relief when he heard someone speaking for him. As soon as he relaxed, his thinking became more active. Have you ever seen a potion that can enhance the freshman from half a year to 5 years? Although Richard Plant was just a decoration at Dawn Wizard Academy, considering that he was sent by the Wizards Association after all, and John Dillon's sworn rebuttal, they all kept their mouths shut. It's hard to say all this. Who knows how far those evil wizards who study black magic have reached so far? Paul Mueller, the same green-robed wizard, spoke at this time, but, Mr. Dillon, don't worry, I definitely don't mean that you have dealt with the evil wizard, I mean, could Daniel Hawkins have contacted them through some method, with a simple purpose, just to win the game? And, I have to say, yesterday. It's obvious to all that the game was abnormal, that's for sure. Yes. Everyone nodded in appreciation after hearing Paul Mueller's well-founded reasoning. So. Paul Mueller turned sideways and said to his brother Alex Mueller, Principal Mueller, we will soon submit the list of contestants to the Wizards Association. To be honest, this time I don't think our college can get very good results in the competition. We have to be more objective after all, but it is undeniable that they all represent the highest level of students in our college and are also our face. Paul Mueller cleared his throat and continued, I think that although Daniel won, even if he did not come into contact with black magic, it can at least be proven that he must have used some kind of heresy to win. Such students must not only conduct a thorough investigation, but also to expel him from school. It doesn't have to be so serious, John Dillon said. Teacher Dillon, Daniel Hawkins is your student. I understand your protective feelings, but this is no longer serious. Paul Mueller paused and said, it's okay to drop out of school. If it comes to a serious situation, send it directly to the Wizards Association. Ah! John Dillon was shocked. Can't you think that Daniel Hawkins is a rare genius? Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Teacher Dillon is really good at joking. Where are there so many geniuses? That's right, how could a real genius come to the Dawn Wizard? The teacher felt that he was about to say the wrong thing and quickly stopped. Nothing, nothing. Okay, everyone, please listen to me first. Paul Muller stopped everyone and said, in any case, the result of yesterday's game must be cancelled. Agree. I agree too. That's right, the result of the game should be cancelled. I don't agree. When everyone supported Paul Muller's words, Richard Plant issued an objection. First, you say that he has touched black magic. You know, if he has touched black magic, his mind will be damaged. They will also follow evil, or at least be disturbed by evil spirits. You all watched yesterday's game. Daniel Hawkins could clearly take away Charlie Matt's life with just one pass, but he chose to dissipate his passivity. Lose. He clearly knows that even if he really takes away the opponent's life on the field, even if he doesn't sign a life and death certificate, we won't say anything to him, because this is a rule since ancient times. After all, the lives of our wizards are entrusted to the ancient gods control life and death, but yesterday's actions proved that Daniel Hawkins is kind. Second, our competition this time is not an ordinary competition. It is a qualifier under the banner of the National Wizarding Academy competition. If the results of yesterday's competition can be invalidated, is it possible that you did not review the players before they came on stage? When Paul Muller heard this, he became anxious and slapped the table. Teacher Plan, what do you mean? I don't mean anything. If I say it does, I mean very simply. Tell me, are you blind? Richard Plan said. No matter what, Principal Muller, the results of yesterday's competition will be invalidated. Paul Muller insisted, and then looked at the other teachers. Agree. This time the teachers did not support Paul Muller as one-sidedly as before. Hey, Paul Muller is like a bunch of losers, so they suddenly said, what can I do if I cancel the results of yesterday's game? The worst is to start the competition again. After hearing this, the teachers all nodded and said, yes, Teacher Poulin, at worst we can compromise and compete again. Okay. Richard Plan said, then I will record the details of what happened before and after the game, based on my understanding and observation, and submit it to the Wizards Association when the time comes. I would like to see how the Wizards Association handles this matter. Richard Plant, you. Paul Muller said, you threaten me. Don't say it so harshly. I didn't threaten you. I just wanted to record what I observed. Look at you, you are so anxious. Richard Plan said very calmly. Brother, Principal Muller, what do you think we should do? Although Paul Muller was angry with Richard Plan, he knew that his brother would definitely agree with him. At this time, everyone's attention shifted back to Principal Muller. Principal Muller said leisurely, Teacher Poulin is right, the result of yesterday's game cannot be cancelled. What? Paul Muller looked at his brother in disbelief, knowing that his brother hated Daniel Hawkins so much. Alex Muller glanced at his younger brother. He knew what his younger brother was thinking. He also regretted not listening to his younger brother and directly ignoring Daniel Hawkins. Well, now that the competition is so big, everyone is a witness. Besides, the Wizards Association must already know about it. Now Principal Muller is riding a tiger, unable to get off the ground. Because of this, he went to investigate Daniel overnight, hoping to find out that Daniel was a spy or an evil wizard. Just when Paul Muller wanted to say something again, Principal Muller stretched out his hand to stop him, then stood up slightly and said calmly in a hoarse voice, I investigated Daniel Hawkins last night. We are decent wizard students in the college. Yesterday's competition was also very open and fair, so the results of the competition will be preserved as normal. Then he paused and said, I announce that the students competing on behalf of our Dawn Wizard Academy are Alan Hawthorne and Daniel Hawkins. Chapter 47. When the results of yesterday's competition and the list of contestants were officially announced, all the students wailed. Damn it, there is no justice. Oh, my living expenses. I can't believe why Charlie Matt is so weak. It's just that weakling. Now I can't even afford bread. Which of you has money? Can you lend me some, even 5 copper coins? I'm completely destitute now if I lend you my hair. Oh, if my father finds out, I will definitely break one of my legs next time you see me. How about we sell the wand? It's bullshit. This is a stupid wand. It's so expensive to buy, and it's worthless when you sell it. If you still have to use it, the Academy only sends out this kind of rubbish. SHH, I know you're angry now, but you'd better not talk nonsense. That's right, hurry up and leave. Some teachers even sighed and shook their heads after seeing the announcement, oh, let's just treat it as a waste of money to ward off disaster. Teacher Black Bear stayed in the alchemy room. Normally, people would come and go after every activity, but this time it was different. He opened the door early and no one came. He looked solemn, thinking while staring at the betting list, and the quill in his hand was flying with his thoughts, writing and drawing, while mumbling various numbers. He didn't know how long he had been calculating, and how many times he had calculated it. He really couldn't believe it. After 5 years of working in this business, he actually lost this time, and he lost completely. This time, he didn't make a good compensation for the bet. Rate. He calculated it several times, and this time, including the money lost by everyone, the interest on the debt, including the handling fee on the gambling money, it was not enough to compensate Daniel Hawkins. Daniel Hawkins had a total of 1,620 gold coins, but now he was in a bad situation and lost 1,000 gold coins. He couldn't help complaining to the ancient god that he originally ran a small business and earned only the handling fees for gambling and the interest on loans, but he never expected that it would be such a failure. Where would he find this 1,000 gold coins now? He paced back and forth anxiously in the room. At this time, he saw a figure coming in at the door. Ah, you are finally here. Teacher Black Bear saw him, as if he had seen a savior. Listen to me. Didn't I tell you not to call me over casually? The man lowered his voice and said sternly. He was wearing a student grey robe, with his hood pulled down low and the scarf around his neck pulled as far as possible. Hi. I know, I don't have to do this. Listen to me. Teacher Black Bear told this man exactly what happened to Daniel Hawkins. 45 gold bets. The man mocked, how dare you accept such a big bet? Oh, how do I know? Teacher Black Bear said, you also knew it at the meeting. I tried my best to echo what you said. I cancelled the results of yesterday's game. The worst I could do was to send the bet back, but who would have thought? Yes, the hooded man is Paul Mueller. Seeing that Paul Mueller stopped talking, Black Bear continued, don't blame me for this. You didn't tell me that you couldn't accept the bet. Is this your attitude when something goes wrong? Paul Mueller said, it seems that I have to find another person to be the teacher of the alchemy department. No, I was wrong. Teacher Black Bear said. Humph, don't forget how I took you in. Without me, you could just plant your messy flowers in the wild. Paul Mueller said angrily. That's right, Mr. Mueller, I will never forget your great kindness. I reflect on my attitude just now. Teacher Black Bear said quickly, seeing that Paul Mueller still had a straight face and said nothing, then just fan your face. Paul Mueller looked at Teacher Black Bear's humble apology, and his anger subsided a little, so he said, okay, although you can't handle this matter well, at least you haven't stabbed him in all these years of doing business. Once you pass the basket, forget it. Teacher Black Bear immediately laughed and said quite proudly, that is, in the entire college, I can clearly understand what kind of students and teachers can do business and what kind cannot. Ouch, you got excited when I mentioned it. Paul Mueller kicked him directly and knocked him to the ground. Although it was a kick, Teacher Black Bear knew that Paul Mueller had calmed down, so he quickly knelt on the ground and apologized with a smile, actually, I am not completely negative about this matter. I have a plan. Paul Mueller glared at him and said, do you have a plan? Then he said curiously, tell me about it. I know that the man named Daniel Hawkins is actually not even a nobleman. He still lives in the slums. Teacher Black Bear said, although the college has recognized the results of the game, I cannot recognize his bet. It is really not possible. In the worst case, just give him the money. Fuck you. When Paul Mueller heard this, he kicked him again, you idiot, how could you come up with bad ideas? We are doing business with integrity. Paul Mueller said angrily, once this matter gets out, I wonder who will come to your place in the future. Besides, he is now the representative of the college and is going to attend the contestant, in other words, is a popular figure in the academy. Although not many people seem to like him, and maybe even more people hate him after this incident, he is also an important person. Paul Mueller continued, now the spotlight is on Daniel Hawkins, and I think this Hawkins kid is not simple. For the sake of being conservative, we can't make a big deal, and we must prevent Daniel Hawkins from making a big deal. In that case, Teacher Black Bear said, let's give the money. Paul Mueller nodded, then took out a bag of money, pay the money to Daniel Hawkins in full. You must always remember that everything that can be settled with money is a small matter. Teacher Black Bear took the money and nodded thoughtfully. Also, I'll give you a piece of advice. Don't be so arrogant when you see Daniel Hawkins in the future. If you can avoid him, avoid him. If you really can't avoid him, you should be more polite. But, Teacher Black Bear said. But what? Paul Mueller was a little impatient. But I am a teacher after all. Teacher Black Bear said, it is unacceptable for a teacher to hide from a student and have a good attitude. Haha, since you started this job, you are nothing in the students' hearts. Paul Mueller said, you are just a fun to play with mud in the Morning Wizard Academy. So, do you want to be a fun, or go out to be a pleasure? After saying that, Paul Mueller walked away. Teacher Black Bear stared at the bag of money in his hand, and couldn't help but use his fingers to hold the bag tightly. Chapter 48. A little thought, not respect. Although for Paul Mueller, 1,000 gold was not a small amount, after all, his money was not blown by the wind. However, fortunately, he was in charge of the finances, and he had many ways to make up for the deficit of the college. He sat in the office thinking, should he force the students to change their wands or robes? No, these methods have been used. Just like the college cafeteria, it is also one of his masterpieces. He was the first person to open a cafeteria in the college. That is, starting from the Dawn Wizard College, slowly, more and more colleges have cafeterias. Paul Mueller opened his notebook, which recorded all kinds of ideas he had for making money for the academy after becoming a green-robed wizard. It must be said that he had a talent for this. One of them attracted him. It read, find some second-rate wizards outside, pay them a low price to write a set of miscellaneous and irrelevant spell books, and then sell them to students at a high price. Just like wands and robes, you have to buy them. If you don't buy them, you can't go to class. All these must be agreed with the wizard teachers of various subjects, and then they are called to expand students' magic thinking. P.S. Of course, this set of books cannot be sold to senior students, so it can only be sold to senior students. Bought for lower school students, about the same for the first and second school years. This is a great idea, so I'll use it. Paul Mueller closed the book with satisfaction, and then took out a list from the secret compartment of the drawer. He scanned it from top to bottom, muttering, who should I give this to? George Malone and Anthony Miller were so anxious that they turned around and shouted, what should I do, what should I do? No money, no money. Luca Rossi cursed, don't bother me, I'm also annoyed. Special brew, Daniel Hawkins actually won, special brew won? He now feels that all this is like a dream. Alan Hawthorne's lips have turned white. With the release of the official announcement, his mood is extremely complicated. First, not only did he lose all his savings, but he also owed a lot of debts. If his father knew about it, it would be hard to imagine what the consequences would be. For him, a broken leg is a small matter. After all, 10 gold coins are enough for a green-robe wizard to earn almost half a year's salary. As a student, he couldn't even think of getting so much money out of there, and then add the interest. Second, he found that since Daniel Hawkins defeated Charlie Martel, he knew that he would never catch up with Daniel. If Daniel hadn't cheated and hadn't been exposed to black magic, then he could only admit that Daniel Hawkins was a genius. Ancient God, Daniel Hawkins is just a poor man, why did you give him such a good talent? He really didn't accept it. What's the point of you turning around? Alan Hawthorne scolded. That's right, what's the point, why don't you think of a way? Luca Rossi scolded them, and then looked at Alan Hawthorne and said, Alan, do you have any ideas? Alan Hawthorne was so angry that his lips turned white and shook his head. Alas, what else can you sell at home? Luca Rossi said to George and Anthony. The money from the sale was all used for gambling. George and Anthony cried. why don't you know how to take it easy? Luca Rossi scolded. Fuck you, George couldn't stand the aggressive Luca Rossi and cursed directly, you told us to sell, or you said we would definitely make a fortune this time, and you took us to Mr. Black Bear, how dare you say that now? That's right. Anthony echoed, glaring at Luca. Damn, do you listen to everything I say? Luca Rossi hit back, I told you to die, why didn't you die, and now you blame me when something goes wrong. They were like this, one after another, no one gave in, and the quarrel gradually escalated from cursing parents to fighting. They were ready for a duel. Luca Rossi looked at them and smiled, hey, both of you, come on, I'm not afraid of you. You two together are not as good as one of my fingers. Just when they were about to cast a spell, Alan Hawthorne shouted, okay, have you had enough? Don't forget that this is the academy. You will be expelled if you use magic to duel privately. Have you forgotten? Not annoying enough, you are making things worse here. After hearing Alan Hawthorne's words, they all calmed down. Only George said angrily, we can use fists. Henry Hawkins felt very strange. Not only did he meet Mr. Black Bear in the cafeteria, but Mr. Black Bear also said to him mysteriously, go to the alchemy department after dinner. This sentence made Henry Hawkins feel cold in his heart. He couldn't help but fall into doubt and asked himself again and again, I lost the bet, but I remember that I didn't borrow money from him. Could it be that I borrowed money but I didn't know it? If that's the case, I don't have any money now. He even thought about whether to talk to his cousin Daniel. Forget it. If my brother knew that I didn't bet on him to win, he would have to chop me. I didn't want to be laughed at by him even if I didn't chop me. Forget it, after dinner, I will go to Mr. Black Bear's place. After all, this is the academy. I don't think Mr. Black Bear dares to do anything to him. But I can't say what will happen after school. After Henry Hawkins finished his meal and went to the Alchemy Academy, he found that Teacher Black Bear seemed to have been waiting for him. To his surprise, Teacher Black Bear's attitude was particularly good. Teacher Black Bear moved a chair and motioned him to sit down. Of course, Henry Hawkins didn't dare to sit down, especially when the alchemist asked him to sit down, because it was very likely that the alchemist would do some potion experiments on your head, and once you sat down, you probably wouldn't be able to get up. Henry Hawkins said weakly, Teacher Black Bear, I don't owe you any money. Teacher Black Bear knew that the other party had misunderstood, and quickly said, no, of course you don't owe any money. As far as I know, your name is Henry Hawkins. Henry Hawkins nodded. So, who is Daniel Hawkins to you? Henry Hawkins wanted to say cousin, but he still said, he is my brother, my real brother. Good, very good, the Hawkins family is full of talents. Teacher Black Bear said, while taking out a pile of coins and said, these are your previous bets, I will assume that you have not bet. Henry Hawkins thought, what is this operation? Just when he felt a little happy holding the money, he suddenly looked around vigilantly. Don't worry, there is no fraud. Teacher Black Bear said. Henry Hawkins looked at the money in his hand, counted it carefully and said, but my bet is not that much. Those extra are just for me to be friends with your Hawkins family, a little bit of respect. Teacher Black Bear patted him on the shoulder and said, if you have any problems or difficulties in the future, you can come to me. Chapter 49. Remember my name. Daniel Hawkins didn't expect that Teacher Black Bear would give money so happily and have a very good attitude. Teacher Black Bear handed the money to him with a smile, Mr. Hawkins, please count it. Good guy, a great teacher who uses you to all his students. Daniel thought it was the result of his victory over Charlie Martel. Sure enough, no matter what world he is in, the law of the jungle, is still universal. Thinking of this, Daniel smiled at Teacher Black Bear and said, no need to order, they are all here to fool around. You believe me, I believe you. Daniel's words surprised Teacher Black Bear. Although Teacher Black Bear was also from the bottom, even the bottom of the bottom, he had met too many people, but no one spoke like Daniel. If you have to use an adjective to describe him, if so, Mr. Black Bear would choose weird. Because Daniel neither spoke nor behaved like a ghetto man, let alone an aristocrat. Not bad, Teacher Black Bear. It seems you are as honest as you said before. Daniel said as he handed the previous receipt to Teacher Black Bear. After Teacher Black Bear took the note, he directly put it under the candle and burned it. I will cooperate with you in the future. Daniel extended his hand to Teacher Black Bear. Teacher Black Bear was stunned for a moment, and then followed his example and extended a hand. The other one, not this one. When Mr. Black Bear slightly raised his other hand, Daniel immediately held it, shook it, and said, "Happy cooperation." If possible, it's better not to cooperate in the future, Teacher Black Bear thought to himself, but he still had a smile on his face. Just when Dan was about to leave, a group of people came from the alchemy department. "Walk faster, haven't you eaten? It's natural to pay back debts." When Daniel heard it, the voice was very familiar. When they approached, it turned out to be Luca Rossi. The 4 nobles were all here, and they brought 5 classmates with them. When they saw Daniel Hawkins, they were all stunned, especially Luca Rossi. The arrogant look when he entered the door just now completely dissipated. Alan Hawthorne still didn't speak, and he didn't even dare to look at Daniel Hawkins. After a while, I heard George say, "Teacher Black Bear, I have brought you all the people. Teacher Black Bear, please give me a few more days of grace." One of the students begged, "We are all from the slums and have little money." "You have no money, you still gamble when you have no money." Luca Rossi patted the classmate on the back of his head. "Mr. Hawkins, if nothing happens," Teacher Black Bear said with a smile, "then I won't send you off." The 4 nobles felt uncomfortable watching Teacher Black Bear treat Daniel so well and treat them so poorly. Although they owed Teacher Black Bear a lot of money, they were also nobles after all. However, as soon as Teacher Black Bear mentioned informing their aristocratic parents, they immediately withered away. Because of this, Teacher Black Bear not only took advantage of them, but also included them. After all, they are considered among the freshmen, who are the most outstanding in terms of strength and background. Incorporate these people to help collect debts, especially the debts of students in lower academic years, whether they are from aristocrats or slums. They are all the easiest to use and save a lot of trouble for Teacher Black Bear. After all, during the whole lower school year, there were no students who could defeat Alan and the others who refused to pay back the money, except for Daniel Hawkins. Daniel Hawkins looked at the crying classmates and couldn't help but ask, "What's going on with them? They all owe money, they all." Before Teacher Black Bear could finish his words, Daniel continued, "I know, they all bought me to lose, right?" At this moment, the students, including Teacher Haixiang, couldn't help but think at the same time, "Hi, you have the nerve to say that." But their expression management is still very good. "How much do they owe?" Daniel asked. "They owe," Teacher Black Bear said. "I don't want to listen to you. Can you show me their bills?" Daniel said. "This is no problem," Teacher Black Bear said as he took out their bills. "This is not a secret anyway." "That's all?" Daniel asked, looking at the bill. Teacher Haixiang nodded, "If you don't believe it, they also have an identical debt note in their hands." He felt that Daniel suspected that he had charged excessively, so he said, "As for this debt bill, they also have it in their hands, and it is exactly the same." Yes, you are indeed operating with integrity, and you are not deceived by others." After Daniel finished speaking, he burst out laughing, with Teacher Black Bear laughing beside him. Then Daniel suddenly said to the 5 students, "Are you all from the slums?" The 5 students still looked sad and nodded. Daniel nodded in response, and then said to Teacher Black Bear, "I have repaid the debts of the 5 of them." "Ah!" The sad faces of the 5 students immediately disappeared, replaced by looks of shock. One of the students asked, "Mr. Huo? Mr. Hawkins, is it true?" Daniel looked at them and smiled, "Really, I even paid back the principal and interest." "Ah, this. I didn't know that one of the 5 students was actually a witch. I just heard her say, this, do you know?" No, said Daniel Hawkins, "you don't have to do anything, just remember my name, especially my last name, Hawkins. And you all know it. I don't need you now, and I hope I don't need you in this life, but if I need you, you all have to remember that you all owe me a favor." Daniel Hawkins' words stunned them all, including Alan Hawthorne and others. Just when the 5 students wanted to thank Daniel, Daniel continued, "This time I will help you pay off your debt. If I find that you come to gamble in the future, I will not let you go. Remember. Remember, thank you, Mr. Hawkins." They were grateful, and the witch even shed tears. Daniel took a look at the list of debts that Teacher Black Bear put on the table. He had to say that Teacher Black Bear was really careful. He saw that the list of teachers, nobles, slums, high school students and low school students were all classified. Of course, Daniel couldn't remember so many names, but he noticed the amount of money owed by the students in the slums. After getting a rough understanding, he said to the 5 students, "You go out and spread the word, as long as you are from the slums, no matter you are in high school, students who are still in lower grades can come to me and I will cancel all their debts. The requirements are still the same as above." At this point, Daniel paused and said with emphasis, "First, remember my name and favor, and second, never gamble again." Chapter 50, Fight in the Canteen. After the 5 students had left, Teacher Black Bear finally came to his senses and said to Daniel Hawkins, "Mr. Hawkins, you are making me lose my business." Daniel Hawkins patted Teacher Black Bear on the shoulder and said with a smile, "It's better not to do business in the slums in the future." After that, Mr. Black Bear left immediately before he could say anything. As for the 4 nobles, Daniel really had no interest in them and left without even looking at them. After Alan Hawthorne saw Daniel disappear, he was so angry that he kicked the door. What is he? How can he talk like that? He is just a civilian, a civilian, a civilian. Is he qualified to say those words? That's right, he sucked. Luca Rossi said, "He has no qualifications at all." Although he was scolding, he felt that Daniel's words were quite handsome. "Hey, don't kick down my door!" Teacher Black Bear shouted. "George, what are you doing?" Anthony suddenly shouted. Everyone looked over and saw George slapping himself hard in the face. Seeing that he had no intention of stopping, Anthony quickly stepped forward to stop. "George, what's wrong with you?" Luca Rossi cursed. "Ah!" George suddenly cried, "I shouldn't have done it. At that moment, I actually wanted to be a slum student." George's words did not attract ridicule or insults from them. On the contrary, they all lowered their heads and remained silent. The news that Daniel Hawkins became an official player spread in the slums of Morningside Town. Of course, this is indispensable to Rob Hawkins, Emma, and Susan. Especially Susan, whenever she goes shopping for groceries, she will say how awesome her nephew is. And everyone knows that in the neighborhood, the Hawkins family has a very talented wizard, so now Susan can get a lot of advantage when buying groceries, especially when the bosses of the vegetable market know that it is for Daniel Hawking. The food here is plentiful and of good quality, which is equivalent to a free upgrade to the VIP selection of dishes. Moreover, whenever Susan sees her biological son Henry now, she will keep saying, "Imitate your brother, imitate your brother." Rob Hawkins was also appreciated by his boss at his workstation. Not only did his boss turn a blind eye when he asked for leave and left early, he actually gave him a promotion and a salary increase. Although Emma Hawkins was not promoted, at least she no longer had to do laundry. The aristocratic master she served even arranged a more relaxed job for her. Basically, she did not need to touch water or needlework. So what was she doing? Just folding clothes and chatting with the bored lady. She can even eat cookies and drink black tea. They all know that all of this is thanks to their son Daniel Hawkins. Since Daniel Hawkins paid off the debts of students in the slums, he found that many students would nod in greeting whenever they passed by him and saw him. Moreover, the other party's expression and demeanor were full of respect for Daniel Hawkins, and the previous feeling of contempt was completely gone. In fact, Daniel was not a gangster. If he hadn't spotted Teacher Black Bear's list, he wouldn't have dared to mess around like this, otherwise his money would be wasted all at once. He still had to help people according to his ability, but as time went by, he gradually gave people the impression that if they had any problems, just go to Hawkins, as if these 3 words Hawkins could solve all their worries and problems. Hardship. Especially when it was time to eat, the best seats had already been occupied by a group of slum students. None of them had eaten. As soon as they saw Daniel Hawkins appear, they would automatically move their seats and serve Daniel a plate. At first Daniel felt uncomfortable and told them there was no need to treat him like this. But they all said, "Mr. Hawkins, please let me do something for you." Daniel Hawkins found that they all respected him from the bottom of their hearts. In this way, whenever Daniel Hawkins ate, a group of people would gather around him, and they would all rush to sit at the same table with Mr. Hawkins. There was a noble boy who didn't have the eyesight to see it before, so he directly retorted, "Hi, What's so big about this? He's just a slum leader. When the students from the slums heard this, they stopped eating. Before Daniel Hawkins could react, they slapped the dinner plate on the aristocratic boy and punched and kicked him. Hawkins told them, although the academy cannot use magic to duel, you will not be expelled if you use fists and kicks. Seeing this, other noble students also joined the fight. This group of aristocratic children have long disliked this group of slum children, but so what if they don't like it? Before becoming wizards, the children of the slums can be said to have grown up doing hard work and even farm work. The strength of their fists and kicks was not something that the pampered aristocratic children could compete with. In this canteen fight, they were pinned down by this group of slum students before even a splash of water arose. The melee lasted less than 2 minutes. Some teachers passed by the canteen, but they pretended not to see it, turned around, and went back to the teacher's canteen. If it weren't for the mashed potatoes and cream soup, they wouldn't have wanted to come at all. After the slum students won, everyone cheered. They couldn't even imagine that they actually hit the nobles. This was the courage given by Mr. Hawkins. The slum students shouted, "You can insult me, but you can't insult Mr. Hawkins. If I hear you next time, I'll knock out your front teeth. Yes, yes, I'll break your front teeth too. Not only will I break your front teeth, I'll make you eat them." Haha, that's good. The slum students shouted at the nobles, rolled up their sleeves and showed off their biceps. After the fight, Daniel Hawkins treated them to mashed potatoes. The slum students ate mashed potatoes while listening to him say, "Thank you for standing up for me. If you have any problems in the future, you can come to me. You will all be my friends in the future." After hearing this, the slum students all laughed and felt that their fight was worth it. Even the slum students who did not participate in the melee regretted not going to the cafeteria earlier. They also wanted to be friends with Mr. Hawkins. In this way, this group of noble disciples were defeated. In the following days, even those noble students who did not participate in the melee would automatically hide in the corner to eat when they came to the cafeteria at mealtime. They watched these slum students sitting in the best light and most comfortable seats, and also saw the special care given to them by the cooks, especially as long as they reported the name of the slum students, they could get a free serving of Hawkins mashed potatoes and a serving of cream soup. Although the noble children could afford mashed potatoes and cream soup, they were afraid of remembering the small amount, and the free dishes often changed, which made them feel a little envious. They also felt very contradictory, and actually envied the people in the slums. Chapter 51. John Dillon taught the key class as usual, and everything was the same as usual, except that Daniel Hawkins was missing from his class now. Daniel Hawkins is now under special approval and does not need to attend classes anymore, as long as he is seriously preparing for the next official competition. Every time he passed by the student dining hall after class, he would take a special look inside to see if Daniel Hawkins was there. Since it is a key class, he himself is a very responsible teacher and loves to punish students. Therefore, every time he announced the end of class, it was already very late. John Dillon is different from other teachers. It can be said that he is the only person in the entire Dawn Wizard Academy who has never tasted Hawkins mashed potatoes in the student cafeteria. Because he believes that the student canteen should belong to the students, and the teacher canteen should belong to the teachers. When teachers go to the student canteen to eat, he always feels that something is wrong, but he can't explain what is going on. But this you can't blame him, after all, there is no concept of obsessive-compulsive disorder in this world. He didn't see Daniel again today, and he sighed slightly. He had hardly seen Daniel since he won the game. John Dillon's mood is actually quite complicated now. He really wants to see Daniel, but he doesn't know what to say after seeing Daniel. This student has completely surpassed him and even has more mature combat experience than him. Can now be his teacher, but he just wants to see Daniel. Could it be that he wanted Daniel to thank him in person? No, no, no. Thinking of this, John Dillon shook his head quickly. As a teacher, it is his bounden duty to train students. These are what he should do, not to mention, in the ancient gods' scriptures it has been said that whatever you do is done for the ancient gods, not for others or yourself. Therefore, it was the ancient gods' will for him to help Daniel Hawkins, and he just followed the ancient gods' wishes. Thinking of this, he also figured it out and decided that he would never think about Daniel Hawkins again. Then he saw that his brows relaxed and his mood became much more relaxed. Just when John Dillon arrived at the teacher's cafeteria and was about to go in, Daniel Hawkins jumped out of nowhere and shouted, "Teacher Dillon!" I have to say that this really shocked John Dillon. Daniel Hawkins made a face in front of Teacher Dillon and said, "Teacher Dillon, my father sincerely invites you to come tonight. Let's eat at my house." "Okay." John Dillon agreed without even thinking about it. "Okay, it's settled. See you tonight." After Daniel left, John Dillon finally came back to his senses. Oh my God, he found that he had changed. He clearly didn't like to eat with Daniel's family before. He was a person who hated socializing. How could he face it now? Daniel agreed to the invitation without hesitation, and actually felt a little bit of joy in his heart. God, I, John Dillon, am a complete hypocrite. I can't go to the dinner party tonight. I want to pray and repent at home. John Dillon was having a great time tonight. After drinking a few glasses of dark beer, he completely hooked up with Rob Hawkins and William Hawkins. The hero of the Hawkins household tonight is not Daniel, but John Dillon. Daniel told his family in detail about Teacher Dillon teaching him magic before the preliminaries, well, except for Teacher Dillon and him going to the Wizard's Bank. After all, Daniel believed that as long as money was involved, he should not talk to his family, especially when there was so much money. Rob Hawkins kept pouring wine for John Dillon and toasting, "Teacher Dillon, come, drink." No, it's too much, I'm a little drunk." Teacher Dillon said so, but his smile turned into squinting eyes. "You're welcome, do you know that today's beer is specially made for you by this boy Daniel? This dark beer is very good, such a cup will cost you a silver." Rob Hawkins said while talking to John Dillon clinked glasses. When John Dillon heard the price of the wine, his eyes widened. He had 4 large barrels of dark beer on the ground. Then he looked at Daniel and thought, "How dare you use my money to buy wine?" But soon he thought again, "What are you doing? I am happy today, and this wine was bought for me to drink. How could I miss my student so much? This is judging the heart of a gentleman with the heart of a villain." William Hawkins has been scolded by his wife Susan recently, scolding him that he can't talk all day long, can't come to trouble, and can't entertain guests when they come. She also cries that she is running the whole house. William Hawkins was also confused. After all the money he earned was given to Susan, and the only pocket money he had was spent on tobacco. Since Susan had been scolding him for not being able to entertain guests and being in trouble, he wanted to show off tonight while Teacher Dillon was around. Therefore, William Hawkins not only drank with Teacher Dillon tonight, but when he was done drinking, he took out 2 pipes, handed one to Teacher Dillon and said with a smile, "Teacher, do you want to smoke?" "Thanks, I don't smoke." John Dillon declined. "You're welcome. I specially bought good tobacco. It goes smoothly and tastes good." William Hawkins said while paying attention to his wife Susan, thinking, "Teacher, just accept my kindness." "William, thank you for your kindness. To be honest, it's not that I'm being polite, and it's not that I don't want to smoke," John Dillon said with a smile, "I don't know how to smoke at all." "Try it." William Hawkins insisted. "Enough." Susan scolded, "Look at him, his stuff smells bad, and you want to lead him astray." Everyone laughed. William Hawkins pouted and smoked by himself. For Susan, she wanted to entertain John Dillon, so she came up with this bad idea to ask William to help, but she didn't expect William to make things worse. Susan Hawkins was selfish, she thought so, if John Dillon could guide Daniel so well, although Daniel was talented, but Teacher Dillon was not bad either. If Teacher Dillon could also give guidance to her son Henry Hawkins, he wouldn't have to reach his cousin's level, but his ability would definitely improve a lot. In this way, he could graduate early, and if he graduated early, he could get commissions and work early, so he could make money early, and if he could make money early, he could pay off his debts, and then he could get out of the slums and live in a big house. Thinking of this, Susan Hawkins also laughed, picked up the wine glass and showed a hearty laugh to everyone. "Come on, I toast everyone." Chapter 52. Redemption. John Dillon drank at Hawkins's house until midnight. Almost everyone was drunk, except Daniel and he who were still sober. He and Daniel Hawkins looked at each other and smiled, "Thank you for your hospitality tonight." "No, I should thank you." Daniel joked, "I didn't expect your obsessive-compulsive disorder to be so serious. You didn't even enjoy my famous Hawkins mashed potatoes and cream soup." Ha ha ha, didn't you enjoy it tonight? You even cooked it yourself. I didn't expect you to be so talented in cooking. John Dillon glanced at his pocket watch and said, "It's late, I should go back too." "Okay. I didn't expect you to be so drunk. See you next time." Daniel waved to him. John Dillon smiled, stood up and stretched, then staggered to the door, groped for the door, and finally touched the door handle after a long time. After he opened the door, he turned around and looked at Daniel and smiled, "Goodbye, Daniel Hawkins." After that, he fell directly on the stairs. Early the next morning, John Dillon woke up and felt dizzy, with a splitting headache and a nausea. Oh my God, a hangover! He had never had such a hangover before. Suddenly he thought of something and sat up from the bed. Looking around, everything was so familiar. After a while, he realized that he was at home. Fortunately, it was okay at home. If he got drunk at someone else's house, it would be embarrassing. But how did he get back? He vaguely remembered that he said goodbye to Daniel. Yes, he must have left Hawkins's house normally after saying goodbye, and then teleported back smoothly. Yes, it must be like this. He looked at his pocket watch. Fortunately, it was still early. He felt thirsty, so he took a few gulps of water. Despite this, he still felt dizzy. Damn it, he secretly cursed himself. In this state, how can he teach students later? Forget it, let's wash up first, and then go to the alchemy department's black bear teacher to see if he has a hangover potion. Thinking of this, John Dillon patted his face, got some water, and prepared to wash his face before going to the academy, change the sour and smelly clothes, and simply tidy up. Just as he opened the closet, his eyes suddenly lit up, and he saw that his collection of robes and staffs were just right in the closet, and then the robes were neatly folded, with a purse on top, and a letter next to it. He quickly picked up the letter and read. Dear Teacher Dillon, thank you for your selfless help and trust in me. I have redeemed your collection for you, and I have also paid off all your bank debts for you. In addition, there is 100 gold coins as my thanks to you. Daniel Hawkins. Reading this, John Dillon's eyes were a little wet. It seems that Daniel has not forgotten me. He found more words below, so he continued to read. P.S. Teacher Dillon, you fell drunk on our steps last night, but fortunately you were not injured. I have no choice but to say that you were teleported back. But I don't know if it was because of the teleportation, but when you arrived at the destination, you vomited all over yourself. I simply dealt with your robe, please forgive me. John Dillon looked at these lines of words, and didn't know what to say for a long time. Anyway, he just felt ashamed, and his blood was running all over his body. At this moment, he felt that his head didn't hurt and he didn't feel dizzy anymore. It seemed that he didn't need to go to the alchemy department. Daniel Hawkins counted the money on him. Excluding the debts paid to the students in the slums and the expenses of Teacher Dillon, plus the food and drink he had eaten in the past few nights, he now had 1,200 gold coins. He also remembered the rings he had looted from the ogre cave when he first crossed over, so he turned all these rings out. He scratched his head, not knowing how much these rings were worth. He put them on one by one, then looked at the upper left corner and found that there was no change in the magic power enhancement, which means that they were not magic products. It seemed that they were just 3 ordinary silver rings and 1 gold ring. If they really wanted to be sold, they probably wouldn't make much money according to the merchant's price reduction, but judging from the quality, they were still pretty good, so he kept them for now. He opened the system panel. He hadn't looked at the panel for a long time. Offensive skills. Ice Shield LV5. Ice Cone LV5. Ice Arrow LV5. Blizzard LV1. Ice Ring LV5. Only the Blizzard was still level 1. Although it might not be very useful for the game, it didn't look very good. So Daniel, with the spirit of being rich and having a slight obsessive-compulsive disorder, spent 70 gold to upgrade the Blizzard to level 5. Looking at the panel with level 5 skills, Daniel thought, very good, it looks much better now. When he was about to close the panel, he suddenly thought of the mall. This mall was really inconspicuous. How did the designer of this system do it? Like the online games he played before, the mall was not only very conspicuous, but also had a red dot to remind you to recharge. When he clicked on the mall interface, he found that in addition to the previous Light of Rebirth that cost 1 million gold, there was another one below. Wisdom inheritance 500,000 gold. This is half the price, but what is this? He clicked on the annotation. Wisdom inheritance skill effect, allows the host to have better knowledge and skill sharing capabilities, but as the host's magic power increases, the sharing ability can reach a range effect. Daniel Hawkins looked at this skill. If he had this skill, he would be the best teacher in the future. But as a time traveler, his ambition is not as simple as being a teacher. He looked at the 4 words range effect. If he also runs an academy in the future, with this wisdom inheritance, wouldn't he be able to run the most powerful academy? Haha, make money, young man. Daniel thought of this and slapped his head. Damn, a few days ago he was thinking about buying a house in the town center with this money. Now what? Really, why do you still want to buy a house after traveling through time? Even if he can't afford the skills in the mall now, he may face many masters in the next game. Now he doesn't know if this level 5 skill is powerful enough. More than 1,000 gold is enough to buy a house, and it is more than enough to live, but if it is used to upgrade skills from level 5 to level 6, it will cost 75 gold. What if he encounters a super abnormal master? This 1,000 gold may not be enough. As expected, he concluded that buying a house now is the most unwise choice. He now has to think of a way to spend the 1,100 gold in his hand. Even if he spends only 1,000 gold, the rest can be used for living or as an emergency reserve for his family. In any case, he must make this 1,000 gold generate more gold. Chapter 53. Seraphia Wizard Academy. Principal Alex Mueller started his speech again. Although the content of this speech was to announce the official opening of the National Wizard Competition, the teachers and students under the podium yawned continuously. Not to mention Daniel Hawkins. If he hadn't stood on the podium with Mario Hawthorne, who was also one of the contestants, he wouldn't have had to force himself to be alert. To be honest, although Daniel had a cheat after crossing to this world, he gradually began to miss the world of Blue Star before crossing because of some small details in life. For example, when he listened to Principal Mueller's speech that was so boring that he cramped early this morning, he missed a super large cup of iced Americano. It's a pity that there is no coffee in this world. Since he crossed over, the most popular drink every night is dark beer. In addition to his ice method, he doesn't know if his spleen and stomach can still bear it. In fact, it's really strange. Daniel admires Principal Mueller. He wonders how Principal Mueller can make such a passionate speech and achieve such a hypnotic effect. Teachers, students, and the 2 contestants on the stage, said Principal Mueller, this National Wizard Academy competition will be held in Saravia. Our Dawn Wizard Academy received a formal invitation for temporary teleportation from Seraphia Wizard Academy yesterday. From now on, as students of Dawn Wizard Academy, as long as you know how to teleport, or have capable classmates or teachers take you, you can teleport to Seraphia at any time. When Principal Mueller said this, the audience immediately burst into applause, accompanied by cheers and whistles. At this time, someone in the audience shouted, "Come on, Senior Hawthorne." Mario Hawthorne has noble students as supporters, and Daniel Hawkins naturally has fans of slum students. Therefore, this shout from someone in the audience was incredible, and directly split the students standing in the audience into 2 camps, and they all shouted to each other, "Come on, Student Hawkins." The 2 camps refused to give in to each other. Seeing that the students in the audience were about to make a mess, Principal Mueller had a lot of things to say, so he could only end his speech in a hurry. Daniel Hawkins didn't know how the world worked. He only knew that a strange scene suddenly appeared in his consciousness the day before President Mueller's speech. Although the scene was just a gate, he was sure that he had never seen it before. It was not until President Mueller's explanation that he knew it was the gate of Seraphia Wizard Academy. While eating in the cafeteria, Daniel Hawkins learned from some senior friends that in terms of wealth, it was one of the richest cities in the entire Lock Kingdom. If it really had to be ranked, this city could be ranked 3rd. Moreover, when it comes to the Dawn Wizard Academy, it is completely incomparable to the Seraphia Wizard Academy. The National Wizard Academy competition held this time happened to be the 150th anniversary of the establishment of the Seraphia Wizard Academy this year. Although Seraphia is not the top academy, it has also produced many great wizards. The quadrennial National Wizard Competition was held in Saravia. Daniel could feel the joy of his classmates, because they could watch the competition and travel in Saravia after watching the competition if they were allowed to teleport. What's more, many civilians would probably stay in a small town for their whole lives if they were not wizards. Ha ha ha, a noble student passed by and heard their chat and said, even if you teleport to Saravia, what if you see something you like? Do you have money? Do you know that the price of a glass of dark beer there is equivalent to your 2-day food? You are a bunch of poor people, traveling without money. After hearing this, the group of slum students were about to explode, but they were stopped by Daniel Hawkins. Don't get angry because of what they said, otherwise you will fall into their trap. The reason they said those words is to see us anxious and waiting to see our jokes. Fortunately, Daniel Hawkins stopped them, otherwise the cafeteria might be in a melee again. It's fine if such a melee happens once. Daniel doesn't want to see it again. After all, he knows that defeating the nobles with fists will never make them truly obey. Unfortunately, although Daniel Hawkins has a cheat now, his power is still too small. If possible, Daniel wants to create a world where everyone is equal and there are no nobles. But he can only stay at the position of thinking about it. After all, historical traditions and ideologies are not so easy to change, let alone through violence. Daniel Hawkins now needs time and money. Principal Alex Mueller is very clear about the strength of his students. There may be some misunderstandings about the strength of Daniel Hawkins, but it should be about the same. Therefore, before Daniel Hawkins and Mario Hawthorne officially set off, they said to them, it would be great if we can advance to the quarterfinals, but if not, we should not lose too badly in the group stage. Anyway, just do our best. Daniel Hawkins almost doubted whether he had heard it wrongly when he heard the principal's words. No way, he thought the principal would cheer them up, but who knew that Principal Mueller looked down on his students so much? Only when he arrived at Saravia Wizard Academy did Daniel Hawkins understand what a century-old school was. They stood at the gate of Saravia Wizard Academy. Judging from the appearance of the castle, it was larger, more magnificent and more imposing than that of Dawn Wizard Academy. This castle was not built around the city center like Dawn Wizard Academy. On the contrary, it was built directly on the mountains. The top of the castle reached the clouds. It happened to be cloudy today, and there were thunders from time to time. The momentum of the castle made Daniel Hawkins stand there for a long time, and he couldn't help but say, this is a castle. If a few dragons suddenly flew out of the dark clouds above the castle, to be honest, Daniel Hawkins would not be surprised at all. Moreover, there was a layer of magic protection around the castle. It is not difficult to guess that it can be said to be a powerful and permanent shield of Saravia Wizard Academy. No wonder Principal Mueller said he needed permission to teleport. But if anyone could teleport anywhere, it would be a mess. No wonder Daniel could feel a strong magical power just standing at the gate. He couldn't help but wonder how much magic power would be needed to break the castle shield. Chapter 54. Everyone is equal in the face of numbers. Daniel Hawkins was not a person who liked to watch sports before he crossed over. One of the main reasons was that he could not understand those very complicated competition systems and was too lazy to understand them. He only knew who would play against whom, whoever won would advance, and whoever lost would be eliminated. The National Wizard Academy competition was not complicated, and Daniel understood it all at once. Although there were many wizard academies of all sizes in the Lock Kingdom, there were only 16 who actually participated in the competition. First, there was the team competition, which meant that Daniel Hawkins and Mario Hawthorne represented the Dawn Wizard Academy and competed against 2 representatives from other academies. The winner would advance and the loser would be eliminated directly. There was no so-called loser group round-robin competition. After the 3rd round of the competition, it was the individual competition, which meant that each academy only selected 1 player to participate in the next competition. The method was also very simple and crude. For example, Daniel Hawkins and Mario Hawthorne PK, whoever won would advance. They continued to advance until the champion was decided, and there was no runner-up or 3rd place. In other words, this competition only allows success, not failure. Even Mario Hawthorne, the son of the Earl and a wizard with rare thunder magic, couldn't help but get nervous. He thought, at least advance to the next round, don't be eliminated in the first round, otherwise it will be too embarrassing. Do you have any doubts about the competition system? Said the purple-robed wizard. The contestants all shook their heads. Well, let's draw lots now. The purple-robed wizard waved his hand, and a black jar floated up from behind him and floated to the contestants. The purple-robed wizard continued, each college sends a representative to draw one, don't draw more than one. I don't know if it's the filter of a century-old prestigious school. Daniel Hawkins even felt that their lowest purple-robed wizards spoke and behaved very imposingly, at least more than those of the Dawn Wizard Academy, and their robes looked very textured. Daniel Hawkins, don't look around or run around. I'm your senior. You have to listen to me here. Got it? Mario Hawthorne said when he saw Daniel standing on tiptoe, looking around, and even felt like leaving him. But from the sound of Mario Hawthorne's voice, Daniel knew that the senior was nervous. At the same time, Mario Hawthorne was also surprised why Daniel Hawkins acted so relaxed. He desperately needed Daniel's relaxation now. After all, such nervousness would not be a good thing if he went to the stadium. It would affect his performance. Yes, Mario Hawthorne thought, Daniel Hawkins was just a civilian who had never seen the world. The reason why he was not nervous was because he did not bear the honor of his family. Humph, this guy with no sense of honor. Thinking of this, Mario Hawthorne couldn't help but say with disdain, Humph, this is your first time in a big city, look carefully, this may be the most prosperous city you have ever seen in your life, you have to know that no matter how prosperous this city is, it does not belong to you. Mario Hawthorne's words made Daniel feel very unhappy, but he still smiled and said, Senior, the jar is here, let's draw lots. Mario Hawthorne swallowed a mouthful of saliva, stretched his hand towards the mouth of the jar, and prayed silently to the ancient god in his heart, hoping to draw a weaker opponent. Daniel couldn't help but laugh when he saw that he was so nervous that his hands were shaking. He sighed and shook his head and said, Senior Hawthorne, it's just a draw, what's the big deal? Daniel Hawkins' words made everyone laugh, and the purple-robed wizard also said, Representatives of Dawn, please hurry up. Mario Hawthorne found that everyone was staring at him, and he was even more nervous. He was angry and nervous, and he stared at Daniel and shouted, You draw. I draw, and Daniel Hawkins reached into the jar without saying a word and drew a six-pointed star symbol. After everyone drew the lot, the purple-robed wizard on the stage said, If you draw the same symbol, you will be opponents. For details, you can see the wooden board on the stage. The team's matching situation automatically appeared on the wooden board. Mario Hawthorne was very nervous and unhappy, but after seeing the wooden board on the stage, his nervousness disappeared. The first round they played against was the Moonlight Wizard Academy. Daniel Hawkins saw Mario Hawthorne with a relaxed face, he should be able to guess what happened, but still asked, What's wrong, what's so happy about? Mario Hawthorne now saw Daniel Hawkins, now he felt that he was not so annoying, he just nodded and smiled, Okay, Hawkins, I didn't expect you to have such good luck. While praising Daniel for his good luck, he was grateful to the ancient gods in his heart, stable, the first round is stable. As long as you pass the first round, it will be good to win later, but if you lose, you can also give an explanation to your father. It seems that you are very confident. Daniel smiled. That's right, I know Moonlight Wizard Academy very well. Although they have been running for a longer time than us, they are very weak. Mario Hawthorne said here, and he felt a kind of confident contempt for Daniel, when you go on stage, everything will be up to me. Daniel folded his hands in front of his chest and nodded and smiled, Okay, you are the senior, I will listen to you. Fuck you, who said we are weak? Daniel Hawkins and Mario Hawthorne turned around and found that it was the two representatives of the Moonlight Wizard Academy. Hey, I thought it was you, but it turned out to be you, Mario. You participated last time, why are you participating this time? Last time you lost in the first round, why, this time you want another round lose, said Moonlight Wizard Academy player Tom Butt. Tom Butt, you have to know that the last time was 4 years ago. I was just a freshman. It was normal to lose in the first round. But now, 4 years later, my strength is completely different from before. Now, what right do you, a repeater, have the right to yell at me? I see there are no people left in your Moonlight Wizard Academy. Just wait for the elimination. I will try not to make your loss too ugly and try to save your life. Scoffed Mario Hawthorne. Humph, I advanced to 1 round last time. Besides, if you have made progress, we have not made any progress. Don't look down on others. It was a pity that I didn't fight you last time. Don't think that your thunder method is amazing. On the battlefield, it doesn't depend on the rarity of the spell, but on the strength of your magic power. Humph, I can feel that your magic power is still a little off. Daniel Hawkins was silent on the side. When he heard this, he remembered that he could see the numerical values, and couldn't help but look at the numerical values of Mario Hawthorne and Tom Butt. After all, whoever has a higher numerical value will have stronger magical power. In the face of numerical values, everyone is equal. Chapter 55. My Money. When Daniel Hawkins looked at the upper right corner, he saw that Mario Hawthorne's stats were displayed as follows. Life, 180/180. Magic, 600/600. And Tom's were displayed as follows. Life, 160/160. Magic, 550/550. And Jerry, Tom's teammate next to him, was Life, 150/150. Magic, 550/550. And Daniel Hawkins's current stats were Life, 220/220. Magic, 1000/1000. Sure enough, Daniel Hawkins thought that except for himself, the three of them were all the same. In fact, even without these stats, he could probably tell the difference between his opponent and himself by feeling. And he was not surprised at his current stats. After all, as the skill level increases, the magic value will also increase. In the previous training with Teacher Dylan, he also learned that in addition to representing the magic capacity, the magic value also has a certain reference value for magic strength. Although the health value will also increase with the level of the skill, the improvement effect is really pitiful. There is no way, who calls him a fragile wizard. Facts have proved that Mario Hawthorne is indeed a little stronger than Tom and Jerry, but this is actually not so absolute. After all, such a game is not a turn-based game, and combat experience is equally important. Of course, for Daniel Hawkins now, Tom and Jerry together, even with Mario Hawthorne, he should be able to handle it. Thinking of this, Daniel Hawkins nodded with satisfaction. If they like to pray to thank the ancient gods, if he wants to pray, he will thank the system. After all, this system is really fine except that it is not very smart and the number of mall contents is small. He dare not find fault with it. If he makes the system angry and leaves him, he will really be sent away at that time. Mario and Tom were still bickering in the same place. The content of the quarrel was very simple. It was nothing more than I am better than you, I have worked harder than you, I have made more progress than you, and you are ready to lose. The content of the quarrel was not only upside down, but also the volume of their quarrel was getting louder and more passionate. It attracted everyone to come and watch. Daniel Hawkins felt ashamed to see them swearing like a shrew, so he simply left Mario Hawthorne and hid in the crowd. Mario Hawthorne even took up the identity of the Earl to suppress the other party. Even if I lose, I am still the son of the Earl. And you, what are you? Just a commoner. If you are eliminated this time, I guess you will never have the chance to become a noble in your life. Everyone laughed. When Daniel Hawkins heard what Mario Hawthorne said, he couldn't help but curse in his heart. Damn, he even wanted Tom and Jerry to win. What happened? What are they doing? A witch who came late came over and asked her companion next to her. Ha ha ha, nothing happened. The representatives of Dawn and Moonlight quarreled. It was just a fight between two noobs. The companion replied. Ha ha ha. Everyone couldn't help laughing after hearing what the witch companion said. With the start of the National Wizard Academy competition, lucky shops around the world also began to become active. Lucky shops are not some fortune-telling and prediction shops, but a serious betting shop. There are still 2 days before the official competition. Daniel Hawkins did not teleport home, but went to the center of Seraphia to wander around. The big city of Seraphia is divided into many areas. In addition to the Magic Academy area where he just stayed, there is also the Magic Center Square. There is a huge magic fountain in the center of the square. It is said that drinking the water of this fountain can restore magic power and is provided free of charge. In addition to the Magic Center Square, there are many other areas. Daniel Hawkins is currently only interested in the bustling commercial area. Hello, how do I get to the lucky shop? Daniel asked an old man. The old man was a little impatient at first, but when he saw that Daniel was a wizard, he immediately became enthusiastic. Ah, young wizard, this is your first time in Seraphia. Daniel nodded. There are many lucky shops in Seraphia, which one do you want to go to? The old man said. Legal. Daniel said without hesitation. Legal? What's legal? Daniel Hawkins saw the other party's puzzled face, and then he reacted. He did a simple investigation. In this world, all lucky spots are legal. This question is of course confusing, so he changed his words. It's more formal and trustworthy. Oh. I understand now, the old man nodded and praised, sure enough, those who can become wizards are smart people. These days, everyone opens a lucky shop, but many don't have the strength, and they just take the money and run away. But the conditions for opening those small shops are very attractive, and there is no need to stipulate how much bet money, and the handling fee is also very low, which makes them profitable. Although the old man answered the question irrelevantly, the information he enthusiastically pulled out made Daniel feel quite useful, and Daniel also politely replied, so which one do you recommend? If you must say the best, it must be the DeLorean family's lucky spot. It's not far away. Just walk along the main road and you'll see it. The old man said. Is this what you locals think is the best? Daniel Hawkins asked. The entire city of Seraphia belongs to the DeLorean family. How can it be bad? The old man looked at Daniel Hawkins as he spoke, and then said, but I don't think you can go there. Why? Daniel Hawkins asked. DeLorean's lucky shop is good, but the betting amount is also the highest, and the handling fee is also the highest. The old man said. How high? Daniel Hawkins asked. It's not certain, but recently with the start of the National Wizard Competition, the betting amount has also been raised. As far as I know, it seems to be 4,000 gold. The old man said. How much, how much? 4,000 gold. Daniel's eyes widened. This is not a lot. The highest one was 5,000 gold. The old man said. Daniel took a breath. He thought that 1,000 gold was a huge sum of money. After all, he could buy a nice house in the center of downtown that was big enough for his family. This guy, he wanted 4,000 gold just for the bet. Daniel continued to ask, so, uncle, do you have any other recommendations? The uncle glanced at him and said with his eyes narrowed, I think you are still a student of the Wizard Academy. Daniel nodded, and probably understood what the uncle meant. After all, this feeling was still very familiar, so he said, but although they are students of the Wizard Academy, they are all adults. Only adults are qualified to be wizard students. The uncle waved his hand and said, no matter what, they are students. Students should study hard and don't touch this stuff with their parents' money. Daniel felt bitter when he heard it, but the money was all mine. Chapter 56. Little Martin. After the uncle finished speaking, he left. Daniel Hawkins looked at his uncle's leaving figure and thought to himself, sure enough, no matter which world he is in, your uncle is still your uncle. But what to do now? Daniel Hawkins originally wanted to find another person to ask, but after thinking about it, he decided not to do it. Although Seraphia is a prosperous city, it is still a world similar to the old European era. If we had to set a time point to compare with Blue Star, it would probably be equivalent to Blue Star's Europe from the 18th to 19th centuries. In any case, the level of public security is definitely no better than Blue Star before time travel. Also, even though he is a wizard, he is still a young student after all. If he asks someone to ask about a lucky shop, he is obviously rich. Even if the person asking for directions has no idea about you, it is hard to say that the person next to him will. I won't hear it, will I have any thoughts about you? After all, it's important to be on guard against others. Although according to his current level, it is no problem to use it to defend himself. As Teacher Dylan said, a wizard cannot even protect his own wealth, then he does not deserve to have that wealth. Forget it, it's a rare visit, so let's go shopping. Since he was a little hungry, he found a pub that looked good to eat. After eating and drinking, he came out of the tavern and looked at the tavern and then at the dazzling shops on the street. Daniel couldn't help but think that if a Chinese restaurant were opened on this street, even though he was not a great chef, he would be able to his home-cooked food can't help but conquer the stomachs of these blonde foreigners. Moreover, he not only knows Chinese food, he also knows some Western food. Yes, it's decided that he will open a tea restaurant here in the future, called Hawkins Tea Restaurant. With his little bit of Western food, Daniel also has absolute confidence. Why, just the boring, unimaginative dishes in this world. Well, after eating and drinking, he continued shopping. At this moment, he suddenly found a family emblem, which was very familiar. This emblem was printed on the sign of a lucky shop. It read, Tour Lucky Shop. Tur? This name was so familiar. After Daniel thought about it for a while, he suddenly thought, yes, it was the aristocratic girl who recruited him as his entourage on the first day he traveled through time. She loved adventure and shouted my Tour family every day. What kind of girl? Since he met this Tour family on the first day of time travel, maybe he really has some fate with this Tour family. Welcome. A staff member greeted him warmly, and looked at Daniel Hawkins with the smallest and imperceptible movements. He immediately concluded that he was a student. Excuse me, this customer, do you need what? The interior decoration of Tour's lucky shop is very luxurious. No, it should be called hahang. It feels like even the floor and walls are covered with gold. It's hard to imagine what the best lucky shop in Seraphia looks like. However, such interior decoration made Daniel Hawkins lower his guard, and he said directly, I only have 1,000 gold coins, and I wonder if I can place a bet with you. When the staff heard this, he immediately beamed with joy. He had no idea that an ordinary student could actually have 1,000 pieces of gold to throw away. He seemed to be a child of a noble family, so he quickly said, okay, of course, we are here. The minimum price for betting on the draw is 1,000 gold coins. He saw that Daniel Hawkins was still stunned, so he continued to say enthusiastically, our handling fee price is very reasonable. I think you are also from out of town. You can go and inquire about the Tour family. It's very interesting. There is credibility. Speaking of this, the staff member looked proud. Okay, I get it. Daniel paused, cleared his throat and said, that's it. The national wizarding competition is about to begin, and I want to place a bet on it. I understand, please, by the way, my name is Martin. You can come to me in the future. Martin said, although I look young, please believe me, I will definitely give you the best service. When Daniel saw him, he thought of himself when he first entered society after graduating from college. However, it had to be said that Martin's enthusiasm really infected him. It is estimated that after Martin's superior saw him, he knew that Daniel was a student, so he sent a young man to entertain him, but Daniel didn't mind. Your name is Martin, what's your last name? Daniel asked. Oh, I'm not a nobleman, my surname is not important, and you will remember me better this way. Martin said, here we are. His tone was quite excited, because since he joined the job, he has always no orders have been placed. Martin walked to the workbench, picked up a quill and notebook, and said, the national wizarding competition is still preparing for the first round. I would like to ask my guest which team do you want to buy? Morning Wizard Academy. Daniel said as he took out the money. Hi. Martin's eyes widened. What's wrong? Can't you buy it? Daniel Hawkins asked, and he was just about to take out the money. It's not that you can't buy it, but the team you chose is very unpopular. No one paid attention to the match between it and Moonlight Wizard Academy all day long, but the other teams were all sold out. Sir, why don't you look at other teams? And the odds are also very exciting, Martin said. Sorry, I just want to buy Dawn Wizard Academy. Daniel insisted. Okay, the odds are 1 to 1. Do you want to bet on Dawn Wizard Academy to win or lose? I'll bet on it to win. Daniel said with a smile. Okay, Martin's feather pen slid quickly on the paper, I see you seem very confident, sir. Of course, if possible, I also suggest you bet on it to win. Daniel Hawkins said with a smile. I hope so, sir, you just need to sign your name and make a pledge on the contract, and then after you give me the money, I will give you a receipt for a 5% handling fee. Martin said as he handed the contract to Daniel. It's really a big city, not only the service is better and more secure, but the handling fee is also half cheaper than that of Black Bear, Daniel thought as he signed the contract. After signing, Daniel Hawkins poured out 1,000 gold from the magic bag bit by bit. Martin was very happy when he saw Daniel signed and had money, because he finally got a bet. As a commoner, not a wizard, not even a warrior, and without any special skills, it was a great gift from the ancient gods that he could get such a job with an elegant environment and good treatment. If he hadn't gotten a bet, he would probably lose his job. Just when Martin was happy, he looked at the contract and the competition information on the side. He asked weakly. Sir, are you Daniel Hawkins? Yes, what's wrong? Ah, contestants can't bet. Worth it. Chapter 57. As the National Wizarding Academy competition begins, Aunt Susan is envious of the Robb family. When she and Emma chat together, she always praises, "You have a good son. I always feel that you will not have to suffer soon. Daniel will take you out of this slum." After Susan praised her, she began to sigh, "Oh, since I married that dead old man William and gave birth to his son Henry, I haven't enjoyed a single day of happiness. Every day I work for wealth, rice and salt. Running around." Although Henry was admitted to the Wizarding College, the subsequent tuition fees, living expenses, tuition and fees are all burdens, and we are still in debt. Oh, Daniel is just going to compete, so he's not doing anything like that. To be honest, after listening to Susan's words, Emma really didn't know how to comfort her. "As for your debt, I also..." No, Emma, don't get me wrong." Susan smiled, "I have no other ideas, just chatting and complaining. Don't think too much, just, if you can, tell Daniel if you can, please take care of Henry. After all, we are all members of the same family, and he is a biological brother like David." Tisk, 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 now he is his biological brother. Emma remembered how Susan treated them on the first day they came to Dawntown. However, Emma's little grudge against Susan disappeared with Susan's enthusiasm and care during this period. And after all, we are all daughters-in-law of the Hawkins family. We have all survived such poverty. We are also women, so we can naturally understand each other's difficulties. "Susan, don't worry, I will talk to my son when he comes back," Emma said. "Okay, your words are enough. To be honest, how could you adopt such an outstanding child?" After Susan finished speaking, she couldn't help but sigh in her heart, "Well, what if Daniel Hawkins was adopted by us? Good. This must be a gift from the ancient gods." Emma smiled. The chat between the two women was overheard by Henry Hawkins, who was reading a spell book in the room. After hearing this, he felt really uncomfortable and ashamed at the same time. He felt that his presence seemed to really bring something to the family. Comes a lot of burden and trouble. He wished he could learn magic faster so that he could graduate early. Moreover, when faced with his mother's praise of his cousin, he was a little unhappy and dissatisfied before, but after experiencing his cousin's various deeds in the academy, especially even teacher Black Bear has a particularly good attitude towards him, so now he completely admires his cousin to the point of being in awe. Similarly, he also hopes that his cousin can guide him. He has asked Daniel more than once for advice on how to learn magic, but Daniel just patted him on the shoulder every time and said, "There is nothing I can do about talent. If you want to ask, just ask the ancient god." Alas, at first he thought Daniel was unwilling to teach him, but later he could feel that his cousin was not lying. If genius were really so easy to teach, everyone would become a genius. However, even in the study of magic, even though his cousin Daniel knew that he could not help him, he still wanted to be with his cousin. He found that his cousin's conversation, temperament, and how he treated others were not comparable to those of the noble children. Although his cousin's current fans are all students from the slums, he can feel that his cousin will be able to do something big sooner or later. Cousin Daniel must not know how he is doing in Seraphia right now, but teacher Dylan promised him that he will teleport him there when Daniel competes in 2 days. Thinking about it makes me feel excited. After all, Henry has never left Dawntown in his whole life, and he has no conditions to leave. His biggest wish is to learn teleportation. Except for some special places with magical protection, he can teleport and run everywhere. Thinking of this, Henry Hawkins felt that he had been distracted for too long, so he focused his attention back on the spell book. Just as he was reading the first line, he only heard his mother outside shouting, "Oh, Daniel, are you back? It scares me to death. Are all you wizards like this? Son, are you coming back for dinner?" Emma asked. Brother. David Hawkins also came out of his home and shouted to Daniel quickly. "Wow, my cousin is back." Henry Hawkins has no intention of reading at this moment and goes straight out of the room. When he sees Daniel and is about to say hello, Daniel looks at Henry and smiles, "You're here, that's just right." Yes, just right. Daniel, take a rest. I'm going to cook now." Susan said with a smile while picking up the apron. No, 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 Aunt, I won't eat. My time is very urgent. I came here to find Henry. Daniel said as he stepped forward and took Henry's wrist. Aunt Susan said while concentrating her magic, Auntie, I'm taking Henry to Seraphia, and he won't be back in the next few days. As for the college, you can ask for leave for him. When Susan heard this, she laughed from ear to ear. Okay, no problem. Oh, Henry, you have to be obedient when the time comes, you know. Brother, I want to go too. David Hawkins was also shouting from the side, running towards Daniel. David, don't come. After Daniel said this, he took Henry and teleported away. It all happened so suddenly. In the blink of an eye, Henry Hawkins appeared in the Seraphia business district. Wow, is this a big city? He was shocked by the bustling streets. Moreover, he never expected that his cousin Daniel had also learned the art of teleportation, and even teleported with people, but his cousin seemed to be able to do everything with ease. Oh my god, how many skills did his cousin hide? Follow me. Daniel said to Henry. Henry nodded, asked nothing, said nothing, and followed his cousin obediently. He couldn't help but think that his cousin brought him to Seraphia, and heard that it would take several days. His cousin must have something to take care of him and help him learn magic. It seems that this trip to Seraphia may really improve his magic level. He doesn't ask to be like his cousin. He will be satisfied if he can be 1/5 of his cousin, not 1/10. Graduate early, take commissions early, make money early, don't ask to be rich, just ask parents not to work so hard, that's all. Henry thought while looking at the shops around the commercial district. By the way, brother, where are we going? Henry Hawkins asked curiously. Could it be that we were going to the bookstore to buy spell books? I heard that Seraphia's spell books are of good quality, and it is easy to buy the latest spells. Even if the magic power is not improved, it is good to broaden your horizons. At this time, they stopped in front of a store called Tour's Lucky Store. Henry looked at Daniel, then looked at the Lucky Store. Before he had time to think about what was going on, he heard Daniel say, "We are here, let's go in." Chapter 58. Martin thought he would place a bet today, but unfortunately Daniel Hawkins was a player and could not participate in betting. This is actually easy to understand. It's just that Lucky Shop is afraid that if players participate in betting, they will fix the match. In fact, for Martin, if a player really wants to fake a match, there are many ways. However, for Lucky Store, there are still clear rules. At that time, after Martin watched Daniel Hawkins put the money back into the bag and left the store, he felt extremely disappointed, which was no different from a cooked duck flying away. Even Martin's superiors told him, "There's no need to wait for Mr. Hawkins, he won't come back. I've been in this business for so many years, and I can still tell from this experience. People like him, if a customer, a Wizard Academy student, can't live up to the rules of one store, they will just switch to a Lucky Store." Martin looked at his superior with disappointment, but he still had a smile on his face. His superior paused and said, "Students like them who can't get by the rules of a store will either give up, or they will usually switch to a store with worse credit. But the rules are not so strict, as long as you can place bets. Can't you be accommodating to a customer like this?" Martin asked. After saying that, the superior shook his head and said, "We can't change the rules for one customer. Martin, I also advise you not to use your brain. Ah! I really want to place an order, even if there is only one order this month." Although Martin roared in his heart, the smile on his face remained. He nodded and said gently, "Yes, I understand, thank you. Your advice." Just when the superior felt a sense of accomplishment for passing on his experience to his juniors, he saw two people coming in at the door. One of them walked in front. After looking around the room, his eyes finally fell on Martin's desk. Place, and then I saw him pulling up the younger person behind him and striding over. Martin looked at them and recognized one of them at a glance as Daniel Hawkins. His smile couldn't help but brighten. He glanced at his superior and said, come on, Mr. Hawkins is back." The superior had no expression on his face and nodded calmly, "Yes." Martin returned his gaze to Daniel Hawkins. Before he could speak, he only heard Daniel say, "As long as you are not a contestant, you can place a bet." Martin nodded repeatedly, trying his best to suppress his excitement. He glanced at his superior again and confirmed, "It's okay." The superior said coldly, "Okay." Martin was puzzled. Wasn't this an order? It was also good for the store. Why was the superior looking so sullen? Daniel followed Martin's eyes and looked at the dark-faced middle-aged man next to him. Based on his workplace experience, he probably guessed something about the situation, but it was important to place a bet now, so he just heard him say, "Then let's get started." After saying that, he took out his money bag, poured out all the 1,000 gold coins, and said to Henry, "You place the bet for me, and I won't treat you badly when it happens." Henry Hawkins has been stunned since he saw his cousin. He has been stunned until now. He never imagined that he would come to Seraphia, which can be said to be the dream of wizards in the country and one of the holy cities of wizards. His first visit was to place a bet at the lucky shop, and he still paid so much money. "Brother, isn't this bad?" Henry Hawkins hesitated. "Stop talking nonsense and hurry up and sign the contract." Daniel directly put the quill into his hand, "Buy Dawn Wizard Academy to win." "Remember, I will say it again. Next, there is only one principle, either buy Dawn Wizard Academy and win, or buy I win. If you dare to operate randomly, I won't let you go. If you don't know, hurry up and sign." Seeing that his cousin was still hesitating, Daniel said directly, "I know, you are afraid that your uncle and aunt will know, right? You are not afraid. If you don't tell, and if I don't tell, they won't know. And when it is done, I will not only give you for a sum of money, I promise to let you all leave the slum. What are you still doing? Hurry up!" Daniel said, pushing Henry's elbow. "In case." Henry said. "What if?" Daniel said. "What if you lose, brother?" Henry said. "Are you kidding me? I have never lost before. Just listen to me and I will make sure you are prosperous. Hurry up!" Daniel urged again. His tone was a little impatient, and his voice couldn't help but rise. If it wasn't close to closing time, they would have it will probably attract the whole store. So, under Daniel's half persuasion, half encouragement, half suppression, and half force, Henry finally signed the contract. After Martin drew up the bill, he looked at Daniel and Henry. He didn't know who to give the bill to for a moment, so he asked weakly, "Then this bill?" "Oh, he bet this bill, so give it to him." Daniel said. "Yes." Martin handed the bill to Henry with both hands and said solemnly, "Sir, please keep your bill. If you lose it, I'll kill you." Daniel said to Henry. When Henry took the bill numbly, Daniel breathed a sigh of relief, feeling as if he had accomplished a big thing. Then he patted Henry on the shoulder and said, "During this time, we will stay in the tavern, eat, drink and have fun. I'm in charge." Before leaving, Martin said to Daniel, "Mr. Hawkins, thank you for supporting me." "Oh, nothing," Daniel said after looking at Martin's superior, "your service is very good, so I will look for you in the future." Martin hurriedly thanked them, then sent them out, looked at their backs as they left, then looked down at the contract in his hand, and saw the signature was written Henry Hawkins. The order was opened. This was the first order in Martin's life. He smiled to his superior, "One Hawkins left, but I didn't expect two to come directly." The happier the superior saw Martin smile, the darker his face became. He had worked in the tour's lucky store for so many years, and he had seen all kinds of people. This time he actually made a mistake in judgment, so he said, "I hope the ancient gods will bless Mr. Hawkins and let him lose all his capital. This is the maximization of the store's interests." Martin looked at his superior with a dark face. He didn't understand. Didn't he open the order? Opening the order is good for the store anyway. Why is the superior still dark? No matter what, today's happiness belongs to him alone. Although Martin is an employee of the tour's lucky store, if the customer wins money, it means the store loses money. Martin didn't dare to speak out his heart. After all, they were on different sides, so he prayed to the ancient god in his heart, "Ancient God, I hope Mr. Hawkins wins this game." As soon as he finished praying, he had a question. His superior prayed, and he prayed too. His superior hoped that Mr. Hawkins would lose, but he hoped that Mr. Hawkins would win. So, who should the ancient god listen to, or whose wish should he fulfill? Oh, no matter what, it's the will of the ancient god. Martin thought about it, packed up his things, and went off work happily. Chapter 59. Pre-War Analysis. Tomorrow is the first game. 16 teams are divided into 8 arenas at the same time. Starting today, except for designated personnel, the players can no longer contact people outside, and cannot leave Seraphia Wizard Academy. You cannot talk to players who are not your teammates. The purpose of this is actually to prevent players from formulating tactics in advance after seeing other players' playing styles in advance. Moreover, it also prevents tourists, students, or teachers from watching the game and then leaking the game process to the players. In addition to the prescribed robes, no staffs, wands or other weapons can be equipped during the entire game. Rings and necklaces are also not allowed. Even rings and necklaces that are not enchanted by any magic and are just decorative rings cannot be worn. When Daniel Hawkins learned about this rule, he was thankful that he hurriedly placed the bet yesterday and told his cousin Henry everything he needed to explain, and also gave him enough money to stay in Seraphia's tavern. Wait until the game is over. Now he just needs to win every game. The only thing he was worried about was whether Henry would place bets strictly in accordance with his requirements in the coming days. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel a little anxious. What if he encounters a very strong opponent and the odds become too exaggerated, but Henry has no confidence in him and selfishly bets on other players? Tisk tisk tisk, Daniel didn't even dare to think about it, and couldn't help but imitate others and pray, respect the great system, don't you also like money? Please let Henry place bets according to my wishes. Mario Hawthorne saw Daniel's anxious look and mistakenly thought that he was nervous for tomorrow's game, so as a senior and experienced person, he scolded him in a sneer tone, "What's the use of being nervous now? It's better to think about the tactics for tomorrow." Tactics, what tactics? I don't understand. Daniel pretended not to understand anything, and he didn't need to understand anything. Instead of worrying about the game, it was better to worry about his betting money. After saying that, Mario Hawthorne went out and looked outside the dormitory corridor. After confirming that there was no one, he closed the door and said in a low voice, "Hey, I know Tom and Jerry very well, so I have already studied the tactics. Tomorrow, I just need to follow my instructions. If you use tactics, you will definitely win." Daniel Hawkins expressed doubts, "Really? You know them very well, but they also know you very well." Mario Hawthorne was stunned for a moment when Daniel said this. After a while, he said, "Stop talking nonsense and listen to me. It's absolutely right. Okay, you are a senior, you have experience, I will give you a thumbs up, I will listen to you, you tell me what to do tomorrow." Daniel pulled up a chair and sat down, expressing that he wanted to drink beer. In the evening, he wanted to drink beer, but Mario Hawthorne refused. "There is a game tomorrow, what kind of beer should I drink?" After blaming him, Mario Hawthorne said calmly and confidently, "Tom is a local magician, Jerry is an ice magician. The formulation of tactics is nothing more than guessing what the other side will do. Obviously, among the two of us, my strength is the strongest, no doubt about it." "Hi?" Daniel asked confused. "Although you defeated Charlie Matt in the qualifiers, to be honest, I don't know what method you used," Mario continued, "but it is obvious that your luck and cleverness account for the majority. When it comes to the stability of your output, you are not as good as me. Therefore, I will be their number one enemy tomorrow." Daniel was no longer confused this time, but sighed, yes, senior's analysis is so reasonable. To be honest, he was quite lucky that Mario Hawthorne thought of him so much. After all, he arrived later. He will fight with Senior Hawthorne, so the more Senior Hawthorne underestimates him, the more beneficial it will be to him. Mario Hawthorne couldn't help but feel very satisfied when he saw Daniel's serious and approving look, so he continued to analyze, "So, tomorrow I guess they will have the following ways of playing. The first one is that they will simply pass you. Concentrate your firepower and attack me directly. The second option is that they kill you first and then deal with me last." Mario Hawthorne said. Daniel Hawkins waited for a long time, but saw that Mario Hawthorne did not continue, so he asked with a puzzled face, "Hi? No more?" "No," Mario Hawthorne said, "aren't these analyses enough?" "Enough, that's enough." Daniel clapped his hands and praised, "Since I'm just a little transparent, what do you think I'm going to do tomorrow? Hide in a corner. You have a beautiful idea. To be honest, I have also thought about taking you to fly." Mario Hawthorne shook his head and said, "Although I am not afraid of the two of them going together, I am also sure, but It's just that we still want stability, right? Daniel said. Yes, yes, stay safe. Mario Hawthorne said. Okay, what do you want me to do? Daniel said. What you have to do is very simple. I don't need you to attack anyone. You just need to use all your magic power on the shield. Then you stand in front of me and provide me with time and space to cast spells. Boy, thought Daniel Hawkins, Mario Hawthorne is using me as a human shield, and he's going to get all the limelight. But it doesn't matter. He will take the opportunity to see if he can copy some of Baiguo's skills tomorrow. If he can copy one, he will do it one by one. Okay, no problem. I will listen to you, Senior. Daniel smiled and said, I will do whatever you want me to do tomorrow. Okay. Mario Hawthorne looked at Daniel's straightforwardness, and felt less disgusted with him. He even felt that the other party was teachable, so he continued, okay, go back and rest quickly, prepare well for tomorrow, and remember to pray to the ancient gods so that we can win tomorrow. For Mario Hawthorne, as long as he wins tomorrow, everything will be okay. He can give an explanation to his father and the academy. It is good to win 2 games, but it would be good if Daniel Hawkins doesn't become a burden to him. Daniel Hawkins did not go back to his room, but went to the cafeteria. Talking and whispering are not allowed in the cafeteria, so there are several purple-robed wizards in the cafeteria watching them. It is precisely because there are people watching in the cafeteria that although there are many players eating supper in the cafeteria, the whole atmosphere is very depressing, so Daniel Hawkins poured 2 large glasses of dark beer and planned to take them back to his room to drink. My goodness, the contestants in the cafeteria saw Daniel holding a big beer in each hand. Each beer was 2 liters. He drank it all by himself. There was a competition tomorrow, so why was he still drinking? Even when Daniel walked to the door of the cafeteria, the purple-robed wizard guarding the door couldn't help but stare at him with wide eyes. After seeing the purple-robed wizard's expression, Daniel Hawkins didn't dare to speak. He just nodded and smiled at him, and then left carefully, for fear of spilling a drop of dark beer. Chapter 60. 2 vs. 1. All the players came on stage one after another. There were very few people in the audience seats for the match between Dawn Wizard Academy and Moonlight Wizard Academy. Except for a few students from Dawn Wizard Academy and Moonlight Wizard Academy, there was no one else. Almost all the audience members crowded into other venues to watch more popular matches. Daniel Hawkins scanned the audience seats and found that except for teacher Dylan, his cousin Henry Hawkins and some noble students from Dawn Wizard Academy, such as the noble quartet of Alan Hawthorne, there was no slum student. But think about it, Alan Hawthorne is Mario Hawthorne's younger brother after all. It is only natural for the younger brother to come to watch his brother's game. As for other noble children, only they have the conditions to teleport here. After all, even among the senior students who can teleport, they have time to come to watch the game, so they might as well take commissions to earn money. Besides, the National Wizard Academy competition is originally a product among the nobles. The students from the slums don't have that free time at all. They probably just listen to other people's arguments after the game and understand the results of the game. Daniel Hawkins looked at his cousin Henry in the audience. He wanted to give Henry some more instructions, but at such a long distance, what else could he do except making some gestures? So he patted his chest to show that he was confident and hoped that Henry would have confidence in him. Besides, at this moment, confidence is money. Henry Hawkins could only nod in response to his brother's actions. He couldn't shout, otherwise it would be too embarrassing. At this time, a blue-robed wizard came up and announced the rules to Daniel and others. The rules were very simple. The winner was the one who beat the opponent to surrender, was seriously injured and could not compete, or even died. Although the mortality rate was very low, the referees who could stop it would stop it, but some players were just unlucky and suffered a fatal injury, or miscalculated their own tolerance, so they died. Daniel couldn't help but sigh that behind high returns and high rewards, there are high risks. With the referee's announcement, the game officially began. It turned out that Mario Hawthorne had completely misjudged Tom and Jerry's attack plan. Jerry, the Ice Mage, went directly to Daniel, while Tom, the Earth Mage, went to Mario. They were one to deal with one, which was not what Mario had guessed, that the two of them were going after one person. In fact, Mario was not completely wrong. At the beginning, Tom and Jerry did not take Daniel Hawkins seriously. After all, Daniel was only a wizard of 1 school year. So Tom and Jerry thought about catching the thief first, and dealing with Mario first. However, they thought that if the flies made trouble, it would be very annoying. It was not realistic for the two of them to focus on dealing with Daniel. Not only would it waste combat resources, but it would also give Mario an opportunity to take advantage of it. So they thought of the conservative strategy of one-on-one, not to mention that Jerry, who was also in the 5th school year, had to deal with Daniel, who was in the 1st school year. Isn't this a piece of cake? They even laughed. As expected, there was no one left in the Dawn Wizard Academy, so they sent a veteran and a rookie. Seeing this, Daniel Hawkins opened a shield without any explanation. With the shield opened, he felt relieved. Even if the opponent turned him into a sheep, they couldn't break his shield. When they could break it, he would turn back into human form. Moreover, even if Jerry turned him into a sheep, according to Daniel's magic level, it would only take a few seconds at most. Of course, he couldn't let Jerry succeed. Daniel kept his eyes on his opponent and shouted, "Senior Hawthorne, this is different from what you said last night. What should we do now?" "Don't ask me, I'm busy." Mario Hawthorne shouted, "Find a way yourself, don't die too early." "Okay." After Daniel shouted, he saw Jerry was about to perform the sheep transformation. He quickly released a spell to counter-attack and interrupted the opponent's spell. He folded his hands in front of his chest and thought, "You can use any tricks on me, but the sheep transformation can't be used." He remembered that he learned the sheep transformation before, which was copied from the sheep transformation of Teacher Dylan. He also thought about how he turned into a sheep and then a human again. He had a feeling of being drunk and blacking out, and completely lost a minute of memory. This feeling was not good, so he swore to himself that he would not let others turn him into a sheep. What did Daniel do? Mario Hawthorne thought. After the spell was countered, the opponent would be silent for at least 2 seconds. This kid was still so leisurely. He only heard him shout, "Bastard, fight back quickly." After shouting, he directly rubbed a lightning arrow and shot at Tom. Tom turned on the earth shield, and Mario's lightning arrow directly broke Tom's earth shield. However, after his earth shield was broken, it turned into 2 earth cones and hit Mario and Daniel. After Daniel took this earth cone, the system rang loudly. Yeah, it was free again, but now is not the time to look at the system interface. However, Daniel knew very well that although his shield was not broken, the power of this earth cone was not weak. Tom was a defensive substitute. Tom also knew that although thunder magic was the rarest spell and the most favored spell in the academy, his earth magic could restrain thunder magic to a certain extent. It was precisely because of this that his shield could just take a hit from Mario's lightning arrow. If it was Jerry's ice shield, he would probably be electrocuted to death. As for him, after seeing Daniel's fighting state, he thought that Daniel, a first-year student, really had no fighting experience. This time he was safe, so he said to his companion Jerry, "Jerry, kill him quickly." Jerry looked at Daniel's standing posture. Rather than saying that Daniel had no fighting experience, it was better to say that Daniel exuded a kind of calm confidence all over his body. After hearing what Tom said, he shouted back, "Tom, I will kill him in 5 seconds." Then Jerry cast a spell while saying to Daniel, "If you have the guts, take this move of mine, my ultimate move." Daniel was excited when he heard it. After all, everyone was an ice magician. He nodded and said, "Okay, Jerry, I hope you can surprise me." After a while, 3 clones appeared behind Jerry. The 3 clones plus his original body, the 4 people poked the ice arrows at the same time, and then the 4 ice arrows gathered together and shot at Daniel Hawkins. "It's over." Mario Hawthorne took a quick look at Jerry and sighed. "It seems that I am the only one who can support everything in the end. Hey, rookie, see you so soon." Tom also glanced at Daniel and said happily, "Next it will be 2 against 1, and the balance of victory is tilting towards us."